All right, everybody, welcome aboard. We're right on time, and I've got an exciting guest for you tonight. He's no stranger to OMEGAMAN Radio. Longtime friend. I'm talking about Jeffrey Nyquist. And you can find him on the web at jrnyquist.blog. Jeffrey, welcome back, my friend. He'll be back here momentarily. I told him to get some coffee. In fact, I got to take some of mine, pour it in my cup. Folks, welcome. We had a great show this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern with Dr. Dale Sides, Liberating Ministries Christ International, LMCI.org. He's got a new YouTube channel, by the way, and it was a great program. Up in the archives right now as we speak, so if you're coming in late, excuse me, I just scarfed down a sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffin. Man, that hit the spot. And it's not pork. It tastes just like pork, but it's beef over here because the Muslims won't eat pork, you see. So I said, how did you make that? That tastes as good as back in America. Really good. I don't eat them that often, though. Praise the Lord, though. So you can get these programs over on our live YouTube tab. And I encourage you to get any program that you miss live. Also, Podomatic is back, so you can get the MP3s. Well, Brother Jeffrey, welcome back, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm just coming back with my coffee.
Oh, good. I got mine. Do you have a particular favorite coffee cup over there?
Oh, gosh. I like medium roast. I like Colombian and Brazilian.
Oh, man.
Coffee's the best.
I love that Colombian. Have you ever been to Colombia?
No.
You know, I lived in Cartagena for a brief period, about 4 months.
That's right. I remember.
I was going to stay, but turns out that getting a visa over there is not easy. They only give you 6 months in a calendar year. Unless, you know, you get married to a Colombian or you've got some other reason for being there. And I could go off into a rabbit trail there, but suffice to say, in Colombia, there was a guy on the street, and he was selling Colombian coffee. In this big box that he held in front of him with these straps over his shoulders, and you go up to him, and he had these little Dixie cups. I'm like, what is that? And it was pure Colombian coffee. Now, I have to doctor mine up with cream and sugar. But this stuff was, it's got to be peanut butter colored. That's the OMEGAMAN's favorite. That means the chemical process is mixed, and it went from black to peanut butter colored as Mom made it with half and half, and, you know, turbinado raw sugar is really good. But over there, it was just black Colombian coffee. Man, I'm going to tell you, I've never tasted any coffee as good as that. Didn't need anything.
Well, I drink all my coffee black, but I won't drink the Kenyan stuff or the Indonesian stuff because it's too bitter.
What is? Don't drink Balinese coffee. Oh, that's really bitter.
Yeah, it has to do with the soil, the kind of soil they have in Colombia and some of those South American countries. It's the best soil for coffee growing, and then the breed of the beans. My dad used to go to Central America and come back with beans on his trips, and oh my gosh, he would have a whole bunch of different things, and we'd be up all night because we'd be so caffeinated.
Now wait a minute, you just accessed a part of my brain. I've got to dust it off because I may have my facts wrong. Is it you or someone else whose dad worked in the space program?
Well, my dad worked with the astronauts. Yeah, one of his things, he owned a production company. He made Josh McDowell's film More Than a Carpenter, which you may be familiar with.
Oh, wow.
My dad did a lot of Christian films in the 1970s and 80s, and he had the contract for NASA through the USIA, United States Information Agency under Nixon, was run by Bruce Herjesen. You may remember he ran for the Senate in California some years later. He was a commentator on ABC in out of Los Angeles, ABC television. But he ran for the Senate. But he headed the USIA under Nixon, and he loved my dad's work as a filmmaker. And so he hired my dad to do all the on-the-ground filming of the astronauts during the Apollo program. So my dad knew all the Apollo astronauts.
Oh man, how I knew it was somebody, and I thought it was you. I was right. Mm-hmm. You told me that years ago.
Yeah.
How cool is that? Were you ever on the set of any of the films your dad made over the years?
Sometimes if he was short of help, he might hire me as a step and fetch it as a kid. And I did some voiceovers when the voice wasn't right and they thought my voice would work, and they'd pay me $5, get around all that I have to pay.
You get a couple of those, you get a SAG card.
Yeah, but he really didn't want his kids in the business, because I guess there are some filmmakers who get their relatives in the business, and apparently it really can be a bad thing.
So did he work in multiple aspects? Was he just hands-on with the camera, or did he do any directing, producing,
He
things
was
like
a
that?
director and producer. They had a film company. They had a sound man. They had cameramen. They had, the whole thing. It was they did, they had the Wilson Sporting Goods account. They did all the commercials in the 80s with O.J. Simpson before he murdered his ex-wife.
Amazing.
Yeah, my dad had a show with Vic Braden, tennis coach to the stars. He did Vic Braden's Sunday Morning Kids show in the 80s. I think that was on the Sports Channel for a Sunday morning. He did all kinds of films and documentaries. A lot of the war on drugs stuff in the 70s. He produced for the government. That was shown in a lot of classrooms around America.
Circa like what, 70s and 80s, Iran Contra?
70s and 80s, it was about, don't take drugs, why not to use drugs. They were showing
that's
these
right.
films in classrooms in high schools and junior highs in the 70s, especially in the 70s. They'd have film projectors in a lot of classes, and these are the movies that they would sometimes show in health classes, for example.
Come to think of it, I am young enough that I do remember some in the driver's ed or PE, and they would show some of these old reels of people drunk driving and
that kind of stuff.
Smashed up cars on the side of the road.
Yeah. So, I mean, my dad did a lot of sports things. He did things with sports medicine. I think that's how he got the Wilson Sporting Goods thing. He did sports. He worked for Campus Crusade for Christ for a while, for Billy Graham, doing film stuff for him.
Oh my goodness. I mean, he met all kinds of cool and interesting people.
Oh yeah, he knew. We had some celebrities for dinner at our house, although, as a little
do you
kid,
remember?
I didn't appreciate it much. It was like, you have to be on your best manners.
Wow, that's cool. Who came over to the house for dinner?
Well, the tall, funny one from Green Acres, I don't remember his name, but he was the most painfully shy dinner guest. He's the main star in Green Acres. Not Eddie Albert,
Oh,
the
yeah,
tall one
the
with
tall
all the
dude
funny
with the black
lines.
hair? Yeah,
Yes,
like
the
a
tall, skinny
stripe
guy.
hunting. I heard later in life he became an evangelist. You ever hear that story?
Well, he was very religious, and
Really?
I think that's why my dad was friends with him. So, he was, but he was very shy man. So when we had him for dinner, he really didn't say much.
Dude, that's
He really
amazing.
didn't say much,
Who
yeah.
else do you remember as a young man coming to dinner?
Oh gosh. Josh McDowell.
Cool.
I don't remember if we had Vic Braden. And there were people who there were adults I didn't know as a kid who they were.
No, who
So
did the
I
cooking?
don't
Your
know.
mama?
My mom did the cooking, of course.
Did she know how to make fried chicken?
60s and the 70s. Did she fry the chicken? I think she always baked chicken. She didn't fry it.
Now, your parents still with us?
No, my mom passed away in 2 years ago this month. 2 years ago today.
Wow,
She passed
that's a
away.
short
2
time
years
ago.
today. Yes, it is. And my dad passed away the year before. They were both in their 90s. It's a funny thing, and this is where these coincidences come in. He died exactly a fortnight before her birthday, and she died exactly a fortnight after his birthday.
Wow,
Isn't that
that's
odd?
uncanny.
On the following year, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Within 2 weeks of each other.
Well, within 2 weeks, no, within 2 weeks of their birthdays.
Of their birthdays.
The one that went first died before. My dad died first. He died 2 weeks before my mother's birthday. And by an odd coincidence, she then died the following year, 2 weeks after his birthday, exactly to the day.
I can't
Isn't that
explain.
amazing?
I can't explain it all, but of course you're familiar with the martial artist Bruce Lee.
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
I am.
so he was born in November. I was born in November. He named his daughter Shannon. I'm named Shannon. Is there a connection there?
I don't
Supposedly he
know.
had one leg shorter than the other. Mine is just a little bit shorter. I
I
think.
think I think it's true of all human beings. I think depending if you're right dominant, one side of your body is a little bit bigger than the other side.
Now, reportedly, he
Very
only had one
slightly.
testicle. I have two, so we don't match up there.
Really? Where do you
Yeah.
get that from? How would you know?
Well, the Bruce Lee trivia, and I'm like one of the world's top Bruce Lee geeks.
Oh my. Well,
Ep-
he was pretty miraculous what he could do with his hands.
Yeah, he was. He was the best. Yes, he was. He was king of gung fu. I'm a big fan.
Hmm.
In fact, since we talked last, I just started taking Wing Chun. Took my first class a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I've dusted off the Bruce Lee files. That's a whole other story. We're going to do a program. I was a big Bruce Lee maniac 30 years ago. Okay. Well, before we get on to the current events, I got to ask you this question. Did you ever have the conversation with your dad regarding did we make it to the moon, Dad?
Oh yeah, that was years ago. I think it was one of the Apollo missions. I was in junior high school, and some kid at school said they didn't really land on the moon. It was fake. So my dad, they had just launched it, and I got home at 3 o'clock, and by chance my dad just had flown back from Houston Control, and so he just got in the house when I did, and I said, "Hey Dad, this kid in school said we didn't really land on the moon." And he laughed. He thought that was the funniest thing. He said, "Well, if it was faked, I would have been the one that faked it," he said.
Wow. What about the death of the three astronauts in that command module? I don't remember the other two guys' name, but Gus Grissom, 1967.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you
Yeah,
ever have?
tragic accident because they were using pure oxygen with the astronauts before then. And if you get a fire, if you get a spark or something with pure oxygen, oxygen's the fuel for fire. So you can actually get an ignition. You can get the place a flash fire, and
Sure.
they did it. They burned to death in an accident, tragically. And of course, it
Reportedly,
was
Grissom had
yeah.
went out there with some reporters or something and put like a sign on there that said lemon. And he said, "Look, if y'all can't hear me in this hangar, how are you going to hear me out in space?" So there's some that believe he was assassinated, burned alive over
Yeah,
there.
I don't think
Look,
so. Look, I think if you are going to be, imagine you're going to be the first person, the first man on the moon, and you're in this Apollo thing, and nobody's done it before, and it's pretty darn scary. And you're relying on all these people to do it without making a mistake. You get one mistake, and you're dead.
that's
And
true.
I think it was getting to them. And NASA was having a lot of bugs at that time. Of course, they had their accident where they died, but there were a lot of mistakes and accidents, and I think it unnerved him. And I think there's some bad blood between some of his relatives in Nassau because of it. Naturally, it would be the case, but they kind of it kind of that tragedy, I think, really put the fear, the sense of responsibility in them, because I think everyone there felt it very much that these astronauts had died. I mean, we never lost an astronaut in space until you have the shuttle missions.
Right.
No Apollo astronauts died in space, although Apollo 13, that was a near run thing. They almost died, but they didn't. And it's really, they picked guys who were test pilots to be those astronauts for a reason, because they needed people with iron nerve to be in that thing, because it is a really, I mean, just think about it. And if you're the first one, you're thinking, are we really going to do this and live? I mean, nobody had done it before, and nobody knew how dangerous it was. The idea that we would do it, Apollo 11, 12, 13 didn't make it, 14, 15, 16, 17, we would do all those missions, and 6 of them would make it to the moon. And nobody would die. That's really like God's hand. I mean, it's crazy lucky, because I think when we go again, and I think we don't have, look, we had super committed people, really hardworking people who made a lot of sacrifices in that Apollo program. They had some people who were such dedicated rocket scientists. I think that they had extraordinary human talent then, and willpower and discipline. And that's why they were able to do it. I think we might have some trouble because look, the shuttle missions were a lot easier than going to the moon. And how many shuttle astronauts did we lose? Quite a few. Two of those shuttles went down.
They did.
And so we lost like a couple, more than a baker's dozen of astronauts, I think, died in the shuttle missions.
If you're just joining us, we're live with Jeffrey Nyquist, and I'm going to ask you one more thing before we change subjects, because I know that you're an expert on Russia, and you've been behind the scenes getting interviews by people in the know on, all these aspects of war and military operations and, political intrigue. There is a consensus by some that we didn't go to the moon at the time they said we arrived, but it was later. And to cover up our inability to get there, they faked the first moon landing. And you say, why would they do that? Well, the same people would say, because we were in the Cold War, and if we could actually prove to Russia that we could put a man on the moon, we certainly don't have a problem putting a ICBM right there on the Kremlin. And whoever gets to the moon first, I mean, that shows you their military prowess. What do you think about that? That possibly we were delayed because we wanted to send a signal to the Russians that if we can do that, we can do anything.
Oh, no, I don't think we fooled the Russians or anyone else. Look, the Russians had advanced tracking systems. They would know if the Saturn rocket didn't go to the moon. We put, and besides, before Apollo 11, we put 2 Apollo missions behind the moon, went around the moon. We had one that went up and circled the Earth, and another 2 that went around the moon. Apollo, 9 and 10 went around the moon. It's these things, these rockets are actually visible at certain times when the sun is on them from telescopes and even to binoculars. And no, look, if you go through all this claim that we didn't land on the moon and everything, you'll find that point by point it can be debunked. And a good example is Van Allen. Somebody asked Van Allen, I think it was in 2002, just before his death, they said, they wrote him a letter and said, these people are saying that the Van Allen belt would kill the astronauts if they flew through it. And he just said, that's nonsense. So the guy they named the Van Allen belt after said it was nonsense that they would die flying through it, because the Van Allen belt has, gaps and holes and ways to go through where it's thin and you're not getting much radiation.
Okay.
And yeah, the astronauts got some, but not a lethal dose. And and things of that nature. I mean, all the things about the camera, the pictures. Now people have done digital studies and they've shown that no, it's all legitimate. So people, people can kind of play detective who don't know what they're doing and make everything that all their objections sound reasonable, but they don't really know what they're talking about. There's the difference between a layman and an expert. Is yes. Experts know things because there's so much that they know that they hold in their head, and they can tell when something's right or false or untrue. And there's no way that they could fake that. And you've got to remember, when people say it's we're having a hard time going, you got to remember the rocket we're trying to send to the moon now is way bigger than, in terms of what it's carrying, than the Saturn V. They were crammed in. There were 3 of them, and they were crammed into a very small spaces, and that lunar module was pretty cramped and small.
I tell you what, Elon Musk is doing today is just amazing. When I saw the missiles that come back down, I mean the rockets and land autonomously, I said, oh my goodness, this is like science fiction.
Well,
reality.
it's the modern computers and AI and the ability to calculate that makes that possible. All the computer technology makes this kind of the way they had to do it, the old-fashioned way, they had to really calculate, and they had very clunky computers back in the day. But you got people like Wernher von Braun, a lot of these rocket scientists. These guys grew up breathing rocketry, and they knew rocket. I think that the golden age of rocketry was in the 20th century. And today, of course, we're just standing on the shoulders of these giants. Wernher von Braun designed the Saturn V. We could not build a Saturn V rocket today because some of the know-how of making the metallurgy to make the engine, how they made the engine, so the actual heat from the engine wouldn't melt the metal. They don't know how to do that now. That was lost in somebody's head when they died.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It is. We
It's like
do
the
lose
samurai sword
technology.
makers.
It's true. Yeah,
You better
yeah,
pass it on before they're lost.
yeah. We don't. Everything is not exactly written down. It's like your grandma's recipes. It's like, why can't I make it the way grandma did? Because she knew things that aren't in the recipe that make it work.
Well, that makes sense to me. If you're just joining us, we're live with Jeffrey Nyquist, and always an honor to have Jeffrey here. We got a lot to talk about tonight, so that was just a warm-up. So I was overdue to call you to get you back on. We haven't done a show, I think, in about a year. Miss you. Glad to have you back.
Has it been that long? Really?
And so the other day, a good friend of mine, Major Tom Baird, retired. He was in Vietnam back in the day. Good friend. He sends me a text, so I got to give him credit for setting this show up. Let me read it to you. And then when I read this, I said, I know who we need to ask, who is in the know. We've got to get Jeff on. So that triggered me to call you. He says, quote, "Oh boy, just a little over 17 hours ago, this is about 2 days ago, this has happened and is reported and analyzed by Alexander Merceries, a proven, honest individual analyst, that Russia has positioned forces on Israel's northern approach, Washington given a 48-hour ultimatum." And then he sends me a YouTube link to look at, and he says, "Is this the beginning of exact scripture prophecy toward the Gog and Magog war?" So that was not on my radar. I want to thank you, Major Tom, for you tuning in, for copying me on it, because that's how this conversation has gotten started tonight. What is he talking about here? Are you aware of some positioning of Russian troops in the last couple days and an ultimatum given to America? What do we make out of this?
Where would these Russian troops be? Where does he say they are?
Well, apparently over there in the Med somewhere, off the coast of Lebanon, Iran. I didn't watch the whole video. I just started watching, and this guy started to give some facts out, and I said, "I'm going to call you." What triggered me to call you was a 48-hour ultimatum.
Okay. Troops depends on what you mean. Yes, Russian military police patrols and observers operate near Israel's northern border in the Syrian-controlled area adjacent to the Golan Heights. And I think that's always been true. And of course, there was the collapse of the Assad regime, big changes in the Syrian leadership. And Russia, I think, because Russia really pulled out and kind of almost on purpose collapsed the regime, I think, and they had infiltrated the several rebel groups. They'd infiltrated some of them, and I think Moscow's got people in there again who are friendly to them because it's an important place for them. And so Moscow redeployed some of its localized military detachments to stabilize and as a buffer in the Golan Heights. So there's not a military police units can't invade a country, right? They don't have heavy weapons. They don't have artillery or tanks. And so they're not set up for an invasion. These troops comprise Russian military police units. They drive light armored vehicles. They don't function as offensive forces, but as tactical lookouts to keep tabs on the border. The reason that Moscow does this is it utilizes the patrols to signal its influence in southern Syria, and they give it as the stated purpose as monitors, to monitor regional ceasefires, and as another justification is to limit cross-border clashes between the Syrians and the Israelis, and deter regional escalation between Israel and local Syrian militias. So, and as you know, there's been friction between Israel and certain forces in Lebanon and Syria. And, this is also an international concern. So, no, there's no, Russia is not contemplating an invasion of Israel.
So, are you familiar of any 48-hour ultimatum given by Russia to America?
Uh, well, yeah, it depends. There's been a lot of statements on of Russia, like Russia. There's something going on. There was a rumor, and the Russians seem to be acting as if it's true that Trump was contemplating using a tactical nuclear weapon against the Iranian position at Pickaxe Mountain.
Oh, wow.
Have you heard that before?
No, not at all. Tell me about it.
It's a fortified position, and our conventional bombs really can't destroy it. So there has been people saying, well, we could nuke it. The Russians flew their Doomsday plane and some other electronic and command and control aircraft into Iran. These are aircraft that could control and coordinate nuclear strikes or retaliatory nuclear strikes if Iran has nuclear weapons. The implication is that Iran does have nuclear weapons, and that if there is a strike on Pickaxe Mountain, they would respond by maybe, attacking the Israeli nuclear plant at Dimona or attacking an American military base, more likely if we're originating the strike. So then on that morning, it was maybe 48 hours later, Patrushev, he's been involved in directing Russian shipbuilding. He made a statement. He's a former head of the FSB and Putin's kind of right-hand man. He made a statement that said that the Russian naval forces are on nuclear alert. And that was that yesterday morning? I think it was yesterday morning or the morning before. Russia has put its naval, because Russia keeps nuclear and tactical nuclear weapons on its naval units. And I'm presuming that this is attack submarines and boomers in the Arabian Sea or Indian Ocean.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Near the theater there in the Persian Gulf. Because I think, whereas Iran will be helped by China with certain things, and China is eager to get its oil out of the Middle East because both Iran and the U.S. are letting Chinese tankers through. China is one of those countries that gets a pass from both sides, but the Russians, the Chinese, since they don't want to antagonize the Americans, who would then maybe cut them off from the oil. The Russians are kind of the ones that are committing to defending Iran. And since Russia's not really using its air force or its nuclear forces against Ukraine, Russia is free to kind of use that aspect of its military to help the Iranians. Right? That makes sense. I mean,
sure.
If you're Russia and you're not using your air force in the war against Ukraine, you can send air units to Iran, and you can send your Navy. After all, the Russian Navy has kind of been forced back in the Black Sea, and because of the Ukrainian drones have hit so many ships. Now, I think as of the other day, 160 cargo type ships and tankers have been hit in the Sea of Azov by the Ukrainians. I don't know how many have sunk or how many caught fire, but the Russians are in bad shape because most of their large refineries are either shut down right now or partially shut down, and the Ukrainians are still hitting the medium-sized refineries, and by some counts, half of Russia's refining capacity has been knocked out by drone strikes, and this is causing a massive shortages of gasoline and diesel, and also kerosene, airplane fuel, jet fuel in Russia. And this is a very serious crisis. There's a lot of voices now rising against Putin within Russia. Some of his allies have been even removed because, well, maybe they've been either against him or somebody is trying to remove his supporters. There seems to be, a real instability beginning in the Russian state because of this. And this is a concern because, of course, Russia, from the beginning of the conflict, has threatened nuclear war if anyone would get in their way and not allow them to to conquer Ukraine. Basically, Ukraine has done amazingly well on its own. We gave a lot more help to Afghanistan than we've given to Ukraine. And largely now Germany is providing most of the assistance to Ukraine right now, much more so than the U.S.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. Well, my first statement is if we were just talking about standing armies, I would have never even considered that Ukraine had the capabilities that they seem to have now. I mean, they're seems like at the cutting edge of new warfare, drone warfare.
Yeah,
I mean,
they are.
For them to hold back Russia, who's a superpower, I would have never guessed in a million years. I would have thought there would have been a little armed force over there, and Russia would have made quick work of them. But has Russia restrained itself? I mean, surely this is egg in their face, and they're a nuclear superpower. Why haven't they just dropped a nuke on Kiev?
Well, because according to Putin, when he invaded Ukraine, he claimed that there are no Ukrainians, they're all just Russians. They're Russian people, and that their country had been hijacked by a Western coup, in Kiev. And so, if you claim you're liberating your own people, you're not going to use a nuke on them, are you?
Well, no. If you say they're Russians being held hostage over there, you don't want to nuke your own people.
Yeah,
That's
you're
true.
not. See, the thing is that, of course, the Russian narrative is a lie. And how do we know it's a lie? Well, there's many ways, but for those of us that study it, the fact is if most Russian-speaking Ukrainians, and by the way, Zelensky is a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. He's not a Ukrainian. He didn't grow up speaking Ukrainian. He grew up speaking Russian. Most Russian-speaking Ukrainians, they don't want to speak Russian anymore. They're very upset with Russia. They're very upset with the invasion. They don't want to belong to Russia. They want to be Ukrainians. When Zelensky ran for election for president in 1919, of course, the Euromaidan revolution happened in 2014, and that's several years before Zelensky ran for president. He won a majority in the Russian-speaking and the Ukrainian-speaking areas.
Now, this is a former comedian who was
Yeah,
on
he was
TV and leotards, and
well,
some said
homosexual.
maybe.
No, he's not homosexual. No, he's
Well, did you
married.
see him dance?
That was a comedy routine. How many
Okay.
times have we seen Mel Brooks get in a dress? I've seen Bob Hope in a dress. Is he a homosexual? He's a comedian.
How the heck
Comedians
did he
do
get
these-
elected, though? I mean, come on.
How did
Well,
he get elected?
Yeah.
It's an interesting story. Have you ever watched his TV show, Servant of the People?
No, other than some of that footage where he was dressed up like a woman. That's about it. So
That was just some goofy thing that was done decades ago, and he was very young. No, he's married. He has kids. His wife is a Christian. I believe he's converted. And Zelensky was a comedian, an entertainer. He put together a comedy troupe. And when the Euromaidan revolution happened, he began doing a very biting satire. He maybe became the lead satirist of the Russian propaganda, where he had this famous routine. He would go to Ukrainian audiences and he'd read. It was a letter from a Russian aunt in living in Russia to a Ukrainian niece or nephew, Ukrainian nephew. And the aunt would go, "Oh my, it's so terrible. You have these terrible fascists and you live," and the audience was in stitches because of course none of it is true. He just took the basic Russian propaganda and some poor elderly Russian woman who believed what she saw on TV, and he was just sort of reading it like this is the way they get their people to think. And he did it in such a way and with such a good comedy that it had, and I watched it, it was funny. because knowing these Russian lies. I mean, Ukrainians don't want to be Russians, and they're not led by fascists. It's not true. No, all of these things against their government is not true. So it's just simply the case that Russia was always, you see, when the Soviet Union broke up, the communists maintained control of a lot of the republics and the Russian Federation itself. They they might call themselves, capitalists, or they might call themselves Christians, but they were still communists, and it was a game. And their whole plan was to remilitarize while the West set aside its nuclear weapons and Europe disarmed, and they would secretly rebuild and they'd come back and take it all. And of course, they needed to maintain through the false promise of democracy, they needed to maintain control of Ukraine and Georgia and all these other republics and keep them in there. But they couldn't. They weren't able to maintain control of the Baltic states. Georgia slipped away with the Rose Revolution. You had the Orange Revolution in Ukraine that didn't quite take hold. But then in 2014, when Yanukovych set the riot police on peaceful protesters, kids who just simply wanted their country to have more trade with Europe, and they wanted to be able to travel to Europe, they were beaten bloody. And the whole country stood up and said, no, we don't like what you did to our kids. And it ended up accelerating into a revolution where President Yanukovych, who is a puppet of Mr. Putin, and I know people that have met with Mr. Putin who, Mr. Yanukovych, before he was president of Ukraine, would be behind the curtain in Putin's Kremlin and popping out like a little Stepin Fetchit. He ended up, his own bodyguard said, because the plan was that he would, with this trouble in Ukraine, he would invite the Russian army in to put down the unrest. And his own bodyguard said, we won't protect you if you read this speech, inviting the Russian army in. So he fled, and the prime minister fled, and all the pro-Russian, I guess you could say, lackeys fled Ukraine. Many SBU generals, governors, people fled, went to Moscow. And then what did they do? They had no government. Ukrainian people woke up and they had no government. So they had to create a new government. And, they asked people's advice, like the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, what do we do? What's your advice to us? They ended up with, Petro Poroshenko becoming president. They had a number of prime ministers and a lot of people who'd never been in government before, from the new Ukrainian middle class went into parliament. And the Russians then promptly invaded Crimea, annexed it, and started a war in Donbass, which they claimed was a grassroots rebellion, but in fact they were Russian troops. And the truth was that they were then sneaking the bodies back into Russia. But the Ukrainians, in some cases, had possession of the Russian bodies. They knew they were dealing with Russian troops. And so the Russians hoped to undermine the Ukrainian government to bring back a government they controlled. Because remember, their plan was to roll Ukraine. One Ukrainian told me the plan is to roll Ukraine back into the Soviet Union when they re-Sovietize. And that was their plan.
Jeffrey, how long has the war been going on over there between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, in 2014, Ukraine was invaded by Russia when Ukraine was annexed, and they started the war in Donbass. So that's 2014. That's 12 years. But that war was limited to Donbass for most of that time. But in 2022, the Russians, since they had failed to have their own coup, they'd failed to being able to infiltrate the government, they decided they were going to overthrow it by a full-scale invasion. They thought that they'd infiltrated the SBU, that's the Ukrainian security services, that they would flip the country in a blitzkrieg. The Russians did not take the Ukrainian military seriously because they had won some battles against them in Donbass. And of course, Russia was pulling out all the stops, and they had their air force. But a number of things happened. The Ukrainian intelligence had penetrated them. They secretly moved their surface-to-air missile batteries, so the Russians did not knock them out and were not able to use their air force. They had attempted to encircle Ukraine and kill the government. But what happened is that their paratroops ended up, because they couldn't be reinforced on the airfield near Kiev that they were going to use to drop a number of parachute divisions, airlift troops into that airport and come into Ukraine from both sides. Ukraine, of course, is on the west bank, largely on the west bank of the Dnipro. They would then open the ways for the tank forces in the east to come in from the front. They had a column of tanks coming in from the north, from Belarusia. So they had a pincer thing. It was all very well done on appearances, but not having the air support, being that the winter was mild and the ground wasn't frozen, so their vehicles got bogged down. They had not seen drones attacking tanker trucks and supply columns before, which hampered their supplies. All these combination of things caused the Russians to get stuck. And the fact that Zelensky didn't flee. President Biden offered Zelensky sanctuary. I'll send a plane. Zelensky said, I don't need a ride. I need help. I need artillery, tanks. I need ammunition. And so Zelensky's courage in standing up to the invasion braced the whole country. And the Ukrainians if you talk to a Ukrainian, they want their independence very much. And I have Ukrainian friends, and they said, if the people thought we weren't going to fight, we were going to fight tooth and nail. Because the Ukrainians have been oppressed by the Russians for a long time. I mean, hundreds of years before the communists came in Moscow. And they want their own country. And they were promised their own country in 1991. And we and the British guaranteed their country, and the Russians too, in the Budapest Memorandum to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. If you look at that treaty, Ukraine was a major nuclear power when the Soviet Union broke up, and they agreed to give up their nuclear weapons, many of which went to Russia, in exchange for Russia guaranteeing their sovereignty and their borders. Which, guess what? Russia didn't keep that agreement. And here we're signatories to it. So we're obligated to them to some extent for that. Now, it was not considered by us to be a guarantee to defend them, but there is a kind of moral obligation in that, gee, we signed our names to this. And in a way, we were promising them that their sovereignty would not be taken away. And the Russians have been trying to do that, especially since February 2022, when they invaded with full force. I mean, they've taken 20,000 children prisoner. They've been brainwashing them, using them as janissaries.
Wow.
in Russia, using brainwashing tactics on children, basically, and many of those children orphaned by the invasion. They've reduced the city of Mariupol to ruins. Probably more than 50% of the buildings in Kharkiv, one of the largest cities, have been damaged or destroyed. You see a lot of damaged buildings in Kiev. A lot of towns have been leveled in the country.
Yes.
And millions of refugees Ukrainians have fled the country as refugees. And the Ukrainians have had to withstand, the Russians have tried to knock out their power the last 3 winters to freeze them to death in their homes. I mean, if you really are trying to liberate people, it's not exactly a proof of your goodwill towards them to wage this war this way. The Ukrainians strike oil refineries and military targets and military factories. The Russians are hitting gas stations, apartment blocks, hospitals, schools, churches. You see, and then the Russians make up stories about the Ukrainians intentionally hitting their civilian targets. It's not true. The Ukrainians, if a drone goes off course because the Russians have jammed it, it could accidentally hit something. The Ukrainians are very focused in their attacks. Attacked the Russian strategic bomber forces, attacked Russian pipelines, attacked Russian mainly oil refineries, ships, ports, storage, oil storage facilities, so that Russia can't carry on the war anymore. And of course, it's reaching a critical point right now because Russia's economy is now seriously affected.
Let us not forget, roll back, 90 years to the Ukrainian famine, where, was it Stalin?
Yes.
Starved millions of Ukrainians to death.
7 to 11 million Ukrainians died in the Ukraine famine. We don't have the exact numbers, and much of the world denied it. We had the New York Times even denied that the famine was real. But now, of course, it's well known that it was real. And it's because the Ukrainians had an independent spirit. Ukrainians are not like Russians. Russians are heavy drinkers. They're very demoralized. The soil in Russia, except for the far south of Russia, is very poor. And the Ukrainians live in a richer land with richer farmland. They have a different spirit about it. It's not quite as cold and forbidding. So further to the south. So there is a difference between the spirit of the two peoples.
Do you
And
think
a lot of the
Russia
most, yeah.
has went after Ukraine for their breadbasket? Could it be about food also?
Well, that's part of it. Russia has been good at growing food recently because petrochemical fertilizers and because of the 4 decades of warmer weather we've had, which are coming to an end now with the grand solar minimum. But so Russia has had an unprecedented grain growing. They've even grown more grain than Europe or Ukraine because chemical fertilizers allow you to just about grow anywhere there's rainfall. But I think the climate is starting to cool. I am persuaded by some of the evidence that we're going to have significant cooling in the next 5-6 years. That's going to make growing the harvests in Russia much less. So, and maybe the Russians know that that's going to happen and they want that grain. But I think it's always been the plan of Russia to reunite the Soviet countries, to put the Soviet Humpty Dumpty together again. I think,
They would, yes,
yeah.
rise to their former power.
Yeah,
Um,
and they can't do that without Ukraine. Russia is not, because the Ukrainians are the most talented of the Slavic peoples. The Czechs are very talented too, and the Poles. But the Ukrainians, out of the Russian Empire, they were the talent behind a lot of things. I mean, a lot of the Russian nuclear scientists, like Andrei Sakharov was Ukrainian, for example. A lot of their missile scientists or laser scientists were Ukrainians. The cream of their officer corps before World War II was Ukrainians, and when Stalin purged them, he was largely killing Ukrainian officers.
so 4 years into this invasion, of course, you accurately mentioned the war really started back in 2014, but
Yeah, 4.5 years now. It's going to be close to 5 years coming up.
almost 5 years.
Mhm.
I think there's some lessons that have been learned. In fact, do you think this whole fight between Ukraine and Russia is kind of a turning point for how modern warfare is going to be fought going forward? I mean, drones have
Yes,
taken preeminence.
yes, it marks a change because we haven't had a major land war in Europe between countries. I think necessity is the mother of invention, and the Ukrainians are famously an inventive people. And so they were put in this position. They had been part of the Soviet military system. They'd been introduced to Western technology in their period of independence. And they have created like a perfect hybrid of some of the best ideas of the Soviet empire or the Soviet system and military system and some of the best things of the West. They've created a unique hybrid. And as necessity is the mother of invention, they did not have manpower to match the Russian manpower, but they could use drones. And drones had been used before, but not in the way and in the inventiveness that they'd used them. You had all these independent Ukrainian brigades with their own mechanics working in garages, inventing new ways of using drones, so that about every 7 weeks they'd come out with an innovation. So the Russians were always behind the curve. And now it's gotten to be that they've been able to extend the range where they can strike things that are 3,000 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. They've extended the payload capacity. They found ways to use them where they can, by hitting the same position on a major bridge, by hitting one weak spot in the bridge over and over again, like with 5 to 7 drones, they could bring a
Yes.
major bridge down. They have used them to take out tanks, to take out artillery, and to take out, oil tankers, to isolate the Russian divisions in Crimea and Kherson, to where they can't get gasoline to the troops in Kherson or Crimea. and that those troops now are losing the ability to fight, because if you don't have fuel and you don't have ammunition, your ability to fight is greatly attenuated. And that's what's happening. And that's why is when those weaken sufficiently, those troops, Ukraine can launch an offensive and just simply sweep up those divisions and take everybody prisoner, and then liberate those parts of Kherson and Crimea that the Russians have occupied. And already the governor of Crimea has said there's not going to be any more gasoline in Crimea, and there's not going to be any electricity.
Takes a lot of gasoline to power those tanks and heavy-duty trucks. Ground wars will never be fought again like they were in the past. I mean, when I started seeing the footage of these little like DJI drones, about that size, dropping a hand grenade right on the head of a dude out there, I would be in panic mode. You see the drones just flying up alongside, a truck, detonating at the driver's side window, hitting a drone, drone swarms. How do you beat these little guys? I mean, 20 years ago, we had the big Reaper drones, like a full-size aircraft, but these are like handheld with plastic explosive now, right?
They're small, they're maneuverable. I mean, I saw footage of a Russian squad. Actually, it looked like two Russian squads taking cover in a building in a blown out city or town in Ukraine. And as soon as they take shelter in there, a drone flies in one of the windows and just flies in and blows them all up inside the building.
Dude, that's crazy.
I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, all those guys are dead. I just saw a T-90 tank today, footage of a T-90 tank that ran over a mine, and there was nothing left of it. That mine was huge. I mean,
how much does it cost to make a tank? $1 million?
Oh, they're much more expensive than that.
Oh, of course. And a little drone,
tens of millions of dollars for a tank.
$1,000 for a mini drone.
Well, they can be $5,000 to $3,000 to $7,000, $8,000, depending on the drone and what it can do.
Sure.
How big it is. There's so many different kinds now, and the Ukrainians have become consummate at jamming drones. So the Russians have gone to using fiber optics cable, up to 20 miles of fiber optics cable, so that they can send drones that aren't shot down, because it limits their range to 20 miles.
I mean, we're talking about what it's like the equivalent of fishing.
Yeah, in fact, birds are using that fiber optics cable to make nests now.
I mean, fishing cable. What do you call that? Your thread that goes on a fishing pole. You can tell I haven't been fishing in a while.
Yeah. Fishing wire. Yeah.
A little fishing wire. I mean, 20 miles.
20 miles. That's been the record I've read about. There may be longer now, but
that's crazy.
And that's been a nuisance for the Ukrainians. But the Ukrainians have developed very good drones that shoot down drones, and their goal is to shoot down 95% of all the Russian drones that come at them. And I think in recent attacks, they've gotten in some of them 93% they've shot down.
Now we've seen Iran use these Shabab, larger size
Shahad kamikaze drones. Yeah.
Okay, and I think those are $5-6 a piece.
Yeah, that would be about right. Yeah, and they're copies of a kind of drone that we've made.
And Russia apparently has made their own copies of it, and of course Ukraine is pioneering them. Let us not forget China, though. You've seen these light shows, if you will, but they're not laser lights; they're just made out of drones with LEDs.
Now those are drone swarms, and what's interesting, and they're not piloted by people; they're piloted by computer AI and chips that are in the drones. And this fighter aircraft we lost, was some speculation has been that was a drone swarm that took that fighter down. Now the Ukrainians are the first to have shot down a jet fighter with a drone over the Black Sea more than a year ago now. This is quite an achievement.
I heard a Chinese operator with a laptop can control up to 1,000 of those drones from one machine. What do you think about that?
Well, imagine what chance does a fighter have if that thing manages to create a kind of a net to catch that fighter in.
What's to stop a drone swarm from flying maybe 10 foot above the ocean and just go right up there and detonate alongside the hull of a cruiser ship?
Well, the Russian Black Sea Fleet, of course, missiles are very effective. The flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva, was sunk by a Neptune missile that had been modified or upgraded. That was a Soviet-era weapon that the Ukrainians had. They upgraded it. It was fired from a mobile launcher on the shore near Odessa, and the Moskva was a heavy cruiser. It was striking targets around and even sometimes hitting the city of Odessa. And the Ukrainians, that thing had been harassing Odessa for a long time, and they got it, and it caught fire in heavy seas. It was trying to turn around and make it home, and it sank on the way back. And so have other Ukrainian frigates and missile boats and so on. The Black Sea Fleet has been decimated. It's hiding out in Novorossiysk and other ports. They lost their amphibious, two of their amphibious ships in the Black Sea. I mean, Russia has been devastated. They cannot use their major Black Sea naval base at Sevastopol because it's just not safe. They've had submarines severely damaged, perhaps sunk by drones. So the Ukrainians are dominant in this form of warfare. I think the Chinese are watching this very closely. The Iranians are too. I think to be honest, I think the Iranians are more efficient than the Russians, and in their use of drones. I think we saw a more precision in striking from the Iranians during our exchange with them at the beginning of this war than we saw with the Russians, between the Russians and the Ukrainians. The Russians seem to lack the ability to do precision strikes. They talk about it a lot, but they seem incapable of doing it. Why? I think that in the Russian armed services, some very stupid people have been promoted. There's corruption. I think the smartest people don't get the job. There's problems there.
Now, is it
In Iran, I think that they have some pretty competent people as opposed to Russia.
now? I remember hearing reports over the past few years of both sides are running out of men, especially Ukraine, and they were grabbing up people out of schools and pressing them into service, even putting youth in there. How bad is the shortage of men on both sides right now to put men on the ground?
Well, the Ukraine, of course, is always in need of more people because they're fighting a very big country, and they can't strip all their men from their working force because their economy will collapse. Because they're with the refugee situation. Look, Ukraine was a country of maybe 44 million people, depending on who you talk to. Russia was a country of maybe 140 something million people. So Russia had 100 million people on Ukraine, and then you had many that went away as refugees. Of course, Russia has had a lot of young men flee Russia. Maybe 3-4 million young Russians have fled.
Some of them were in Bali.
Yeah, and all over the world, wherever they can get to. Yeah, and they fled to Central Asia, Scandinavia, Europe. Turkey is another country they like to flee to. Georgia, places like this. But so both sides have had, a lot of people don't want to fight, more understandably. But I think there's been more motivation for the Ukrainians to fight. I think Ukrainians really want to defend their country, and so. The Ukrainian army, the Ukrainians have had around 700,000 to 800,000 troops on the front. They've been able to maintain that. That's kept their front going. The Russians the Russians don't want to go to full mobilization, but the Russians have been mobilizing. Russia has lost, they're saying 1.3 million men dead and another 500,000 maybe wounded.
Good grief.
The Ukrainians probably have not quite had 200,000 dead. It could be less than that. And, maybe 300,000-400,000 wounded. Hard to say.
Are we about to exceed the body counts of World War I and World War II combined?
Oh, no. World War I, more than 20 million people died. In World War II, more than 60 million people died.
I didn't realize that was high. Okay, 60 million. Okay.
It's not. No, it's nothing to be compared with that. Although this war is lasting longer, both sides, because the weapons, there was a firepower revolution in the 50s and then other advances in weaponry in the 1980s and 90s. And then with drones, 80% of the Russian casualties now are from drones, believe it or not. And of course, a lot of them killed by mine. Both sides are laying minefields. So it's somewhat like World War I in that the front doesn't move very much, because if you stick your head up, you get it blown off. It's very hard to attack. It requires great support and ingenuity to attack. And of course, the Ukrainians, they tried, I think it was in the second year of the war, was it, to launch an offensive. It didn't work out very well for them because really the Russians are competent at defending. I mean, defense is much easier in modern war than attack because the other guy's coming at you across the open and you've got these wonderful weapons to, blast him into dust. But the real art is attacking, how to do it. And one of the things that happened at the end of the Cold War to the Russian and Ukrainian militaries, and to a lot of militaries, by the way, except for the British and Americans and maybe the French, people stopped training their brigades to coordinate with each other within divisions and corps. So, for example, imagine you can only attack with one brigade. You can never have three brigades attack together in a coordinated way. Well, how are you ever going to make an offensive work if you're attacking one brigade to one brigade? In order to win a battle, you need like 3-1 to 6-1 odds to really crush the other side. Well, if you can't coordinate more than one brigade, you can't get more than 1-1 odds in an attack. And what happens at 1-1 odds? It's just a slaughter. You just take 100 men in a trench and then 100 men walking in the open towards the trench. Which 100 men are going to die, right?
Well, I think both are going to die now when that drone comes over and hits you.
No, but when you're hidden, the drone has to be able to see you. And if you're in a trench and you're able to fire first and you're in bunkers and stuff and you're protected, it's when you're in the open that you're really vulnerable to being killed, whether it's by a drone or artillery or machine gun.
I saw some footage of, I don't know, it's like a no man's land, but it's super dangerous if you want to get out there exposed. So they've got areas that have like netting over the tops of them and the sides. And I saw footage, the drone was coming in and people running into the trees and hiding behind it. Man, that drone has changed everything.
Yeah.
How is this thing going to end with Ukraine and Russia? Almost 5 years into it now. What's your prediction? Because I keep hearing that Ukraine is getting drones further and further in there, into the interior of Russia.
Yeah, that's right. Up to 3,000 kilometers now.
Wow.
And of course, Russia's a big country. There's still places they're not reaching. But right now, things are coming to an head because imagine if America lost 50% of its refining capacity. Do you think we would avoid a cascading, supply chain collapse? No, we wouldn't. So Russia is facing a cascading supply chain collapse. Now their leaders are saying, well, we're just going to tough it through. The civilians are just going to have to be tough. We Russians are tough. We're going to tough it through. They're not going to short the military of its diesel and gasoline and airplane fuel. They're going to short the civilian sector. They're going to ground, commercial airliners. They're going to, buses aren't going to run. People aren't going to be able to get a tank of gas. I mean, people are waiting 3-4 days for a tank of gas. And, if you see the interviews with these people in Russia waiting for a tank of gas, they'll say, well, why would you wait 3-4 days in a line for a tank of gas? Well, it's not that I need it to drive every day. I just need it for if there's an emergency.
3 to 4 days. Good Lord.
Can you imagine that? 3 to 4 days to get a tank of gas.
Oh, so much
Have
for
you seen
the
videos of the lines? There are miles and miles of cars. People will park the car, leave, and come back, and then move it up the line.
Boy, the shortage that we had in the 70s in America ain't got nothing on that. I'm a child of the 70s.
Yeah.
3 to 4 days. Let me fast forward and ask you a couple quick round questions. I want to jump back over to Iran. Lindsey Williams has just died, coming back from Ukraine.
Lindsey Graham, you mean?
Excuse me, not Lindsey Williams. Lindsey Graham. You think there's any hanky-panky there, or just had a...
It doesn't seem so. I mean,
Heart
I
issue.
didn't see the latest. I saw in some early tests they did on him. He had a torn aorta. His father died of a heart attack when he was like 68 or 67.
Okay.
So there's heart disease runs in his family. He was 71. He'd had apparently untreated high blood pressure at some point.
Okay.
That's how you get a torn aorta. And, he was having chest pains. And he even made a remark. He made the remark, I've got to, he really wanted to see Ukraine supported and defended. And he said, and he wanted to see sanctions on Russia. And he said, I've got too much to do to die right now. He didn't really want to go to the doctor. Maybe he sensed his death coming. But
one of the architects for support of Ukraine. I mean, he's on
Yes.
some of the early footage back in 2014
Yeah, he was a very big supporter of Ukraine and also of Israel.
with John McCain.
People. Yeah, John McCain was one too. Of course, John McCain has been dead from brain
Sure,
cancer for many years now.
sure.
But yeah, Lindsey Graham was perhaps, in my view, too aggressive in some of the things he wanted to do. I don't think it's wise to use a nuclear weapon on Iran. I don't think decapitation strikes are a good idea, or even first strikes. I don't think that we should play that way. We should be honorable in all things. But his heart was with the Ukrainian people, and I think the people who are under attack in those countries from what are totalitarian dictatorships that are enemies of our country. Russia is a very dangerous enemy of the United States, not the Russian people, the Russian government. And the same thing with Iran. I think the Iranian people are maybe one of the most pro-American, pro-Israeli people in the world, but their government hates us.
For
and
sure.
would love to drop a nuke on Israel, I think. At least that's the way they talk. And of course, the question is with the way that they're policed in Iran and the tens of thousands they've mown down of protesters in Iran, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is going to be tough to beat. And it's going to take. See, I think the Trump administration. I think, and I would only disagree with Lindsey Graham in that we shouldn't do surprise attacks and we shouldn't use nukes, but I think we need to go in on the ground. And I say that not because I want to go on the ground or I want to see Americans die, but because I think we're going to all discover that we have no choice, because they've closed the Strait of Hormuz, which is 20% of the world's energy, and only the Chinese, our enemies, are getting the oil out.
That's not good.
And I mean, part of the Saudi oil is getting out, so it's really only 15%. Okay, let's be exact. That is not getting out, but this is really shorting our allies, Japan, South Korea, and Europe, and we're trying to carry the load. So it's draining our oil reserve at about 4 point something million barrels a day, and we've got, I don't know, around 300 million barrels. I think it's less than that, maybe. I haven't checked later, but it's basically not enough for us to get to the midterms at the rate that it's going dry now.
Jeffrey, who is calling the shots behind the scenes? Because it almost seems schizophrenic. The official stance may change.
Donald Trump is the president. He's calling the shots.
I realize he's the president, but is it him making the blow by blow, or is it he just got some bad advisors? Because I think we're making some bad mistakes. I don't know who it was that suggested this. It was one of these retired generals. It was on a newscast, but I kind of liked what he said. He said, let's make a strong statement to them. If they attack, we take out a bridge and we take out a power plant. If that doesn't teach them, they do it again. We take out another bridge. We take out another power plant. I mean, these negotiations, who can negotiate with terrorists? They never repent. That hasn't worked out too well. And why haven't we taken out Karg Island? If we know that's a problem, I agree with you.
If we control the strait, if our Navy can prevent ships from going through, there's no reason to risk troops attacking Karg Island. I don't see that as strategic. I mean,
why do we need to invade it? Why not just carpet bomb it? Turn it into a crater.
Turn what into a crater?
Karg Island. How big is it?
No, we don't need to bomb it or invade it because that oil can't get out. It can't get out because we control the strait. If you have oil coming out at Karg Island, it has to be carried in the tanker through the strait. And our Navy's sitting at the strait.
I made a mistake on that one. That's a place of interest because is that where the oil reserve is?
That's where their main oil spigot is that's their main oil spigot for tankers loading. But I am told by a Chinese source that they have a secret oil pipeline going into Iraq, and that the Chinese ships that are loading up with oil in Iraq, by the way, the Chinese own a lot of the Iraqi oil fields. Just think we overthrew Saddam Hussein so that China could own Iraqi oil fields. Think about that. And a
You're
lot of
right.
the oil fields that China doesn't own in Iraq, the Russians own, right? Go figure that
Right.
one.
Oh yeah.
The Chinese, as they're loading up with our Iraqi allies' oil, they're also loading up secretly with Iranian oil that they're buying through the secret pipeline. Now, I haven't been able to verify this claim by my Chinese source, but he's been good before. But the
Interesting.
Chinese are getting their 10 million barrels a day out of the Middle East. Now, mainstream sources will say, "Oh no, they're only getting 7 or 8 million barrels." No, I think they are getting 10. But we'll see, because China seems very comfortable with the situation the way it is,
I want to drill
which is
down on.
really, yeah.
Hold off on Iran for a moment because I had two more questions left on Russia before we make the jump over there.
Hmm.
There's been rumors that Putin had cancer and he is sick. What do you think about that? Is he
Well,
alive and well?
He had an operation a few years ago. I think around the beginning of the war, this current phase of the war, and the operation went well, and it was said to be cancer. He's got Parkinson's as well. He turned 74 this year. That's
Parkinson's.
the age that Stalin was when Stalin died.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so Putin is, yeah. There's rumors that he's not long for this world, and things aren't going well for him politically or militarily. And so the story is, and I think there's something to this, but it's hard to know because it's such a secretive, opaque system. Putin his original plan was to live into advanced old age, to live, to rule another 10 years, to be there till 2026, to rule until he's, 84. And then to step down and hand over things to one of his sons that he has had through his mistress. He has two sons that are living at his fortified compound there in the Valdai Hills area. Their names are Ivan and Vladimir Jr., right? Those are his sons. I think they're about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years old now. They're around
Ivan,
that
like
age.
in Ivan the Terrible?
Ivan, yeah, like Ivan the Terrible, yes.
Wow.
And those are his sons, and I think he wants to groom them to succeed him. But he's got daughters from his legally married wife, who he's divorced from. So he's, I think Ludmila Patina is his wife, right? But they're divorced, and he has two daughters. I think they're in their 30s. I'm not sure, but his younger of his two daughters, Katerina, she has been involved in politics, and there's some in the Kremlin that are calling her Catherine the Great, right? And it seems that Putin has her as his backup, that she's going to take over.
That's
They're going to
interesting.
make her deputy prime minister. She's going to govern with someone else, and then she's going to take over until the boys can come of age. I
So,
think that is his thought, because he's done so badly here. He's really messed up so badly as in these latter years, ruining the country's prosperity, destroying everything that he built earlier on, and turning the world against him, and killing all these people in Ukraine. I think that he needs a relative to take over to prevent him from, basically from them digging up his corpse and hanging him in effigy after he's dead.
I
You know,
heard that he's one of the richest men in the world.
it is said that he might be richer than Elon Musk, but it's hard to say. I mean, all of the, Putin's group, people forget the original Bolsheviks, the communists. Lenin got thieves and thugs and criminals around him when he was in the Russian Social Democratic Party. He was leading the Bolshevik, the so-called majority wing of the faction of the Russian Social Democratic Party back before World War I. And people would come up to him and say, "Vladimir Ilyich, why are you hanging out with all these criminals?" And he'd look at them and he would say, "Well, you egg-headed intellectuals, I can't make a revolution with you. With these criminals, I can make a real revolution." Right? So what happened is yeah, he had, Stalin was a thug, a bank robber type. Actually robbed banks to raise money for Lenin.
Wow.
So he really believed in thugs and criminals, and they filled the KGB with them, and they filled the party with them. And of course, if you look at what the Bolsheviks did when they overthrew the provisional government in 1917, they basically looted and they took things for themselves. They stole, they raped, they pillaged, and they acquired a lot of property, dachas, and so the party faithful enriched themselves, and that's what kept them loyal, and that was part of the system. And so these are families that have ruled Russia since the Bolshevik Revolution, still the same families. So you've traced the trees of the family trees of these
Decades.
people. Decades, a whole century, more than a century.
I mean, look at
And
Putin. In there
yeah,
since what I
and
get, 1999?
yeah, and
2000?
stealing is just part of because communism is about a revolution against property. And so, oh, we don't have anything, so we're taking yours. And now it's the dictatorship of the proletariat. Of course, it's really the dictatorship of the lumpen proletariat, right? The lumpen proletariat is the criminal class. And so
The
this
political
is really
party
the nature of the
of
regime.
the criminal class that want to take what you got so they can enrich themselves. Is
Yeah.
that the bottom
And
line?
and they justify it by saying they're Robin Hood, right? So
Right.
communism is a big Robin Hood game, but they're all just a bunch of robbers. So this is what I mean. You read the Gulag Archipelago, and Solzhenitsyn has the part where after they got tired of after they acquired a lot of property and they were shooting people and taking their stuff, just accusing people of being counter-revolutionaries just to get their, oh yeah, you got a nice jacket, or you got a nice house over here, or a nice horse, or a horse and buggy, because people were still largely using horse transport back then in Russia.
So accuse them and then confiscate their
And
goods?
then you take it, right? And then
Yeah.
it's state property. Well, who runs the state? We do. We Bolsheviks.
Sounds
So
like the DEA a little bit.
And of course, the farmers in Tambov was a area in Russia with a lot of respectable middle class farmers who rebelled against the Bolsheviks during the Civil War. They sent Stalin and Felix Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the Soviet secret police, in there, and they linked up with the mafia gangs, and they used the mafia to help destroy the farmers and the small townsmen and exterminate whole villages. And of course, the Tambov mafia emerged as a faction aligned with the Communist Party there. And of course, they became very important decades later in Putin's operations in St. Petersburg with smuggling, and of course, smuggling drugs into Germany, money laundering, and all kinds of, prostitution and so on. So,
Which
you
has
read,
even infiltrated America, right? We have
and then you read Putin's kleptocracy. Look, Putin's gang does things like, okay, they under capitalism you pay taxes. In Russia, they basically just stole things from everybody and made everybody work for very little food and very low wages. That is, they just suppressed consumption and kept for themselves. What happened after the fall of the Soviet Union is they let people have their own businesses, which they're largely looting now. But there's always been, acquisitions, you could say. But what they did is that they would collect taxes from these people. Then they might murder a businessman and give him a tax rebate, in which case they would take the rebate themselves.
Oh my goodness.
Right? They do
That's
things like
ruthless.
that. Yeah, no, I mean, and so they were stealing from the treasury at the same time. They were, it's unbelievable, the schemes for money making. And of course, under Stalin, now see, Stalin knew that they were a bunch of thieves, and Stalin didn't want them stealing from him, from his state. So what he did is he had sanguinary discipline. He was pretty bloodthirsty. So what he would do is, oh, they're stealing, are they? Well, I'm going to just wipe them all out. So he'd have them all arrested for corruption. He'd have them all shot the next day. He'd put new people in. If anybody did what he didn't like, he wouldn't even tell them why he was having them shot. It was up to the other people to figure out why. So Stalin created this terror. Well, what happened when Stalin died is Khrushchev said, we really didn't like living under this, us party apparatchiks. We didn't like living under terror. So let's make a rule that we never terrorize ourselves again. Well, guess what? The thieves were then free to steal again. and Stalin wasn't around to put them in the ground if they did. So under Brezhnev, it was an orgy of corruption, and these mafias emerged with all the party apparatuses and all of the oblasts and their party, the different regions, republics of the Soviet Union. So after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they thought, oh yeah, we're going to fool the West and make them think that we're going to be capitalists, but we're just going to control it, and we're going to build our arms back and come back, and they'll put away their nuclear weapons and we'll own the world. Well, what they didn't realize was they were all a bunch of thieves, and they couldn't resist the stealing. So Russia became Gangsterville. They all started an orgy of stealing, and without Stalin's strong hand to restrain them, they stole. And so talking about Putin being the richest man in Russia, well, guess what? Putin was sort of the captain of the biggest gang of thieves in the country.
Jeffrey, write this word down. You just gave the name for your next book. What about a book called Gangsterville?
I think those books have been written about Russia already. There's quite a number.
That'd be a good one. Incidentally, the Russians have arrived in Bali. Now, there were Russians and Ukrainians fleeing the war, but I'm talking the Russian mafia. I just saw
the Russian
2 days
mafia is everywhere. And by
ago,
the way, they're an extension of the secret police. They're not just a mafia.
Bali now has a problem with Russians coming over here and setting up meth labs. Now, if you get caught with drugs over here, you go to Karabokan prison, one of the world's worst prisons. And if you're a drug dealer, they'll take you out to an island and they shoot you till you're dead.
Well, how corrupt is Indonesia?
Well, there's a lot of scam operations going on, just like in Nigeria.
Well,
but in terms of
if the Russian
drugs,
mafia offered the police enough money, would they look the other way?
well, something's going on, because I saw 2 days ago a report that not only were there some villas that were busted where some Russians had come over and were cooking drugs, but the Russian government has said, we're going to help you with this issue and go in there and try to crack down on it. I didn't realize it was a problem. But then about a month ago, a dude got his head chopped off with a Japanese samurai sword. Crime is rising up over here. Yeah, that's interesting. They cut his head off with a samurai sword, and his girlfriend fled into the bushes, and they couldn't catch her. No, they've been busting a lot of foreigners coming in here with ideas to set up drug operations in a country that will kill you for that. I mean, it's like Singapore, Malaysia, they'll hang you, they'll shoot you. I mean, I didn't know we had that drug underbelly, but apparently we do.
Well, you got to remember, the Russian criminals are taught to be very tough. And so they will kill the police or bribe the police. And what you may find is that organized crime, and this is a general rule, is usually the creation of the local politicians and the police.
There's a lot of corruption.
And you don't get organized crime if the police are honest, because the police outnumber the criminals and have more guns. And if the police are doing their job, the criminals are going to be caught and thrown in jail.
And then they've emasculated.
If the police see an opportunity for a monopoly on something people are, prostitution or drugs, or alcohol is in Prohibition, the police are going to look. During Prohibition in Chicago, when Al Capone's gang was bringing that Irish whiskey in over the Lake Michigan, it was the Chicago police that were standing on the beach making sure that nobody interfered with this delivery of alcohol, and it was the mayor that got one of the best bottles of liquor in the whole shipment. So, and what did those Chicago policemen do with the money? They put their kids through college.
When you get some time, Google Russian and Ukrainian villages in Bali. There's whole areas like Chengu, which they're buying up land. These groups, Ukrainians and Russians, and they're building whole villages over there.
Well, if they didn't have partners in the police, they wouldn't have gone that far, would they?
And the sad part is you can't own a weapon over here. You have to even get a permit to own a BB gun. I kid you not, a BB gun.
But
so what's your OMEGAMAN going to do?
If you got enough cash, you could carry a machine gun and a grenade launcher.
Well, you could in Costa Rica. I know that for sure. There was all kinds of stuff down there. There's a new movie that popped up on the radar. Have you seen the movie yet or heard of it, called The Wizard of the Kremlin with Paul Dano and Jude Law? It's supposed to be the backstory on the rise of Putin.
Oh, is it? That's good. When did it? Is it in the movie theaters now?
Yeah, just came out about 3 months ago. It's called, well, it's on DVD now probably, or you can get it on Netflix.
Wizard of the Kremlin. And who plays Putin?
Okay, Jude Law.
Oh, wow. He's a good actor.
And they've got Paul Dano. So produced 2025, but I just saw it release here. And actually, I watched part of it over on the Russian website, OK.ru.
Oh, gosh. I want to see that movie. That sounds
Okay,
great.
so,
Yeah.
well, listen, I just gave you a bonus. Now you got a homework assignment. Okay.
That'll be fun. I've read the book, so I know how the story goes.
Now, there's a lesbian love scene, so at that point, I had to turn it off. But I didn't get very far. They had a nightclub scene, and it basically starts out, I guess the fall of communism and people over there in Russia, they want to be free. They want to, they want to live like the West, and then bam, there's a lesbian love scene, so I had to turn it off. But
there's probably some liberty or license. Hollywood is always going to try to exonerate the socialists and try to give some kind of smack against America in there. Somehow we're to blame, right?
If you see two girls kissing, just fast forward and get over to some of the meat on Putin. Okay, so let me ask you this. How is the war going to end for us over there in Iran right now?
Of course, we're not. It's not ending for us because we're not in it, and there's no American forces fighting in Ukraine, so it's not our war. It's the Ukrainians' war. It's the Russians' war. There's North Koreans fighting in it, and there's some Chinese fighting in Russian uniform.
No, I meant to say Iran, but you did bring up one more question. I forgot to ask you.
Yeah.
Last
I thought you were asking about Ukraine.
Like, 2 years ago, Kim Il-sung sent over, about 1,000 North Koreans or so to fight?
Oh, no, 10, there's a couple brigades over there. He's got, there's probably over 10,000 North Korean troops.
What happened to those guys? Did they all get killed, or are they still deployed over there, you think?
They've had some pretty heavy casualties.
Well, I guess so, when a drone drops a grenade on your head.
Well, they had a friendly fire incident where they opened fire on some Russian troops, and the Russian troops fired back.
Oh, wow.
And they put them in some pretty heavy firing in the Kursk Oblast when the Ukrainians went into the Kursk part of Russia. I think that they suffered some heavy losses there. I'm not sure exactly the specific engagements, but I understand they made a big war memorial in Pyongyang to all the fallen North Koreans in fighting in Ukraine.
I think probably the North Koreans didn't know what hit them. They probably got shell shocked. I mean, this is their first engagement in war since the 50s, right? When they were fighting.
I think as bad as the Russian rations are and the Russian troops are treated, I think the North Koreans probably found Russia to be a paradise, in comparison to North Korea.
Well,
and
then
of course they got to be killed in combat, which is probably a great relief for many of them because of the way they suffer. So I don't know. It's been. I know that the casualties are inordinate. The Russians use human wave attack tactics, and I think the North Koreans were actually protesting and saying, "Look, don't use our troops like this." I think there's been a little bit of friction between Pyongyang and Moscow over that.
Okay, so I gave you a movie to research. Now here's a potential interviewee. We were talking about Stalin. Are you aware, and you probably are, that Joseph Stalin's granddaughter lives up in Portland, Oregon?
Well, his daughter famously defected to the United States.
She had a daughter named Olga Peters who goes under the pseudonym Shreese Evans.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently
Stalin, defected to the United States. She became an American.
It says his granddaughter runs a local vintage and antique store, embraces an American lifestyle, but she's a practicing Buddhist. Have you ever thought about interviewing Stalin's granddaughter?
No, she's a private person and she deserves her privacy. She said this is a person who never met her grandfather, so she wouldn't know anything more than you would or some other person.
But perhaps her mother had memories she passed on. It'd be just an interesting.
There's been a lot of interviews
celebrity
with Svetlana Stalin. I think she wrote a memoir, if I recall correctly, about her father. Yeah.
Okay.
What was most interesting about her memoir was her father's death. So.
Interesting. Okay, so I think I've asked you enough questions on Russia, but I want to jump back over to Yeah, Iran for a moment. You know, I've suspected for the longest time, I couldn't prove it, but that they've had nuclear capability for a long time. Maybe they just didn't have the throw weight. But now they've got those, Shabab missiles, and didn't Iran put a missile over there off of that Black Island that we operate with the British? What's it called? Diego Garcia.
Diego Garcia. Yeah, I think they've tried to send missiles there. I think they were intercepted.
I mean, that's a long way to fly. Does
Well,
Iran have
the
atomic
Iranians
weapons?
have, nobody knows for sure, but they're acting like they do. North Korea, their buddies, have a nuclear weapons project. Their Islamic brothers in Pakistan have nuclear weapons.
For sure.
Of course, the Chinese and Russians are their buddies and also have nuclear weapons. So they could have gotten nuclear weapons through any of these quote unquote friendly countries. Joseph Bodansky wrote a book years ago that he claimed the sources that said that at the end of the Cold War, Soviet Kazakhstan, gave 2 nuclear warheads to Iran, that they bought them, and that they were able to refurbish them. I don't know if that's true, but it seems to me if North Korea, after all this time, with less wherewithal than, by the way, and less talent
Right.
than the Iranians, could have a nuclear arsenal of 30-something weapons, I think it's credible that Iran already has a couple nuclear bombs.
Well, what the hell then is going on with our government saying, oh, we're trying to prevent them from having a nuclear bomb? They've had it probably. I mean, the Persians are brilliant. And like you said, at the fall of the Berlin Wall, anything and everything was being plundered from the bases there. Weren't Ukraine, Russia, and Seoul? So, I mean, are you going to say that Iran didn't have money to buy a couple of suitcase nukes at least? I mean,
well, I think
I know
Mr.
you and I don't think that way, but just
Yeah,
the general public,
Lee Wheelbarger, who monitors air traffic, Russian air traffic, a year ago May noted that the Russian planes that are specifically carry nuclear warheads around Russia were landing in Iran a year ago April.
Wow.
And late March, and he believed that Russia was transferring nuclear weapons to Iran then. And of course, we don't know, but it is worrisome. I had a conversation with an official of the IAEA 25 years ago at a conference at Texas A&M University at the George Bush Center, and he told me that basically that Russia had given North Korea the bomb, that North Korea's nuclear weapons program was a fake. It was meant to make it look like they had invented their own bomb, that they had been able to develop the technology on their own, but then in reality, Russia wanted a place to test its nuclear weapons, and North Korea was a good place, and then they could give North Korea nuclear weapons. So if that's true with North Korea, I think it's probably true with Iran. And I would, I'm of two minds. There's people who say that the Iranians are particularly crazy people because they believe in the 12th Imam and all these apocalyptic prophecies, Islamic prophecies from their sect of Islam. And, but I think already super crazy people got the bomb when Stalin got the bomb, because Stalin was a stone cold psychopath. Kim Jong-un is a psychopath.
Sure.
Mao was a psychopath. He had the bomb. All of these people, the descendants of Mao, these people are not just criminals. They're mentally ill. I think Colonel Luna of the GRU defector I knew really well. He said, these are not human beings. These are crazy persons, right? These are not normal people. And they've had the nuclear weapons a long time. They haven't used them on us yet, but I think they would if they thought they could get away with it, and maybe they do it even under certain circumstances if they weren't going to get away with it. So I think we're already in a really bad way. The wisdom of the great statesman Otto von Bismarck, who united Germany in 1870-71, he had a statement about preemptive war, which is kind of what we're waging in Iran. And he said, no, preemptive war is wrong. Never wage preemptive war. He said, preemptive war is like committing suicide for fear of death. And I think in a way, by provoking this war against Iran, we're bringing about the very thing that we're afraid of. They probably already have nuclear weapons, and now we're pushing things to the point where we're saying we're going to eliminate the regime. I'm afraid, it would seem to, they were bad, they were making trouble, but the strait was open, and it was sort of livable, although people were dying, and they were dying in smaller numbers than now. Um, and the world's economy was running. Now the danger to all of us, because when you take away economic wherewithal, you are killing people. When people's standard of living goes down, their health goes down, their food goes down, their quality of life goes down. People die. People can't get medicine. It gets bad enough, and in civil wars and problems erupt all over the globe. You can't hardly calculate the loss of human life and the misery, which is also has to be calculated. So, as a political equation, we probably should have left things as they were, because, Machiavelli once said, the wisest thing to do in most of these cases is nothing, but don't abuse it.
Well,
Don't
as
do
it
too much.
stands for America, however, that was not the day-to-day reality for Israel, who has been attacked for years by proxies of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. And, I think just the mere fact that Iran has been threatening to destroy America and Israel for decades is, enough's enough. But even forget the oil for a minute. I was not aware of this until recently. Somebody told me, Jeff, that the largest underground church of Christians in the world is Iran.
Yes, I think that's probably true.
I thought it was China. I had no idea. How many over there?
Because Islam has become so obnoxious to the Iranian people, and
Yeah.
it's such a horrific dictatorship. Many Iranians have turned against Islam, and they've looked at Christianity as a very, very welcome opportunity. Here's a God that offers forgiveness, that offers love, as opposed to hate and war, right? So this would naturally be much more appealing. Um, so the great tragedy here is that these people have been tortured and oppressed, and the Iranian leaders are our enemies. It's death to America, death to Israel,
Yeah.
and of course, getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, Lindsey Graham makes the argument we should go and get them. I think after all the murdering they've done down there, and that
Oh,
they've
man,
closed the
yeah.
Strait of Hormuz, and that they won't negotiate, I think we're placed in an impossible position where our civilization could collapse, because we've got all this indebtedness. If the
Yes.
oil runs dry, if we are not able to defend ourselves, because we're suffering economic collapse, or we have a civil war because of the economic collapse, they're really a threat to our society, and maybe an existential threat if they get nuclear weapons and they try to use an EMP weapon on us.
Well,
Right?
big time. And, not to mention, we've always got the menace out there of Russia and China, who are dead set on attacking us at the opportune time.
Yeah, but here's the caveat: if we must not use a nuclear weapon on them, and we must do it honorably, and we must be careful that we don't actually cause the kind of attack on us that we're afraid of by
Got a
the way
point.
we proceed. Now
Yes.
it's too late. It would have been better to do nothing. I would proffer Machiavelli's advice, but it's too late now.
Yeah.
We attacked them. We surprise attacked them when we were negotiating, and we killed 47 of their leaders. Well, the Israelis did, using intelligence Trump gave them. That was kind of rotten thing to do. It wasn't in the course of chivalry. It wasn't a very Christian way of behaving, but they're evil people. And now we're at war, and they won't negotiate. And I suspect, I don't know for sure, would love to have peace again, but it may be not the case. And that we are going to have to send 6 divisions, 1 Marine division and 5 Army divisions, send the bulk of our Air Force and a lot of our Navy, and we're going to have to invade and collapse the regime.
I think
And
we
it's
have
going to
no
be bloody.
alternative.
We're going to lose. We're going to have 10, 20,000, American dead and wounded. It's going to not be like Iraq. It's going to be much worse. And we don't know, with their state of drone technology, we're behind on the drone
Oh,
stuff.
man.
It could be
horrifically
very
behind.
bad for us because we're just getting started on this drone warfare business, playing catch up. And
I'm
so the
so shocked at
administration
that.
hasn't been the administration hasn't been wise. Our management of
No.
the Pentagon hasn't been wise. I'm disappointed in Pete Hegseth, to be honest. But it may be that, and Trump, I understand why he doesn't want to get involved in a ground war, but the bombing is not going to collapse the regime. That's my judgment. I've studied military history my whole life. I've studied strategy. It's never happened. Nobody's collapsed a regime by bombing. Hitler couldn't collapse Churchill's government by bombing. Churchill couldn't collapse Hitler by bombing. We used nuclear bombs on Japan. Yes, we did.
You're right.
But we had surrounded them and sunk their navy, and they were being attacked from behind by the Russians. So their army in Asia was being overrun. So, and by the way, they even only voted to surrender when the emperor decided to surrender, and he only did it because they were being offered a peace deal where the emperor got to stay in power.
Well,
Japan didn't
I didn't know
surrender.
that.
Right?
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, we still have an emperor in Japan. So that was because we didn't make Japan surrender unconditionally the way we made the Germans. So you look at Iran now,
Yeah.
and you look at the same situation. Given their mentality, do you think they're going to surrender from bombing? No, they're not. I don't believe it. If they were going to surrender from bombing, when we killed all their leaders that bright shining morning that we hit their the Ayatollah Khamenei's compound, that's when they would have fallen apart, and they didn't. So I think it's too late for that. I think they've strengthened themselves, and I think we've just got to go and dig them out. It's a terrible thing to say.
I agree.
I hope that I'm wrong in it, but I think that what's going to happen is when the markets start to collapse,
Yes.
and people start shouting that Trump has failed, he's going to realize he should have sent ground troops at the beginning when the Ukrainian people were ready to rise up.
Well, I agree with you.
I mean the Iranian people, Ukraine, Iran. The Iranian people were ready to rise up. And I think this all began, remember, when the Iranian people wanted to overthrow their government.
Oh, yeah, they're putting up signs. Trump, help us. And when we didn't make the move we needed to, that regime over there went in there and slaughtered 30,000 people in like a week.
Yeah.
Shot them in the face. And that's just what we know of.
I think God blesses if you're doing something with humility.
Yes.
For the good of people, wanting to fight evil. I think God will bless your efforts if you pray and your heart is in the right place. But if you do it wrong and you're trying to cheat and get away with something that you shouldn't be, and fight the way you shouldn't be, fight dishonorably, maybe God won't bless that.
I agree with you 100% on that. Now, Trump, he certainly doesn't want to be embroiled in this. And he thought he could do like other times and just negotiate and, win this deal and I'll come away, with a win. It hasn't worked out that way for him. And it's not for a lack of trying to go to the negotiation table. I've lost track of how many times we've been negotiating. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
I heard one analyst
mention
that a lot of people don't understand the ethnic makeup over there. Now, I don't know if this is correct or not. He said 51% of the population are Persians. The other 49% are other ethnic groups that the Persian government keeps in check with 500,000. Was it 500,000? Yeah, 500,000 police force that rule with an iron fist over there to keep the other 49% in check. And then we look at the largest Christian population over there. Now, I'm 56, but I remember waking up during summer school, turning on the TV, wanting to watch cartoons or something, and it was this is day 35 over there, since the storming of the embassy over there, the hostage situation. What was it, like 1980, 79, 80? And
it was 78. I'm sorry, 79. It was 79.
Yeah, 79. That went for so long. Now, that's been 46 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine having to live under that. If nothing else, we should be over there with the goal to set free our Christian brothers and sisters over there. But how are you going to do it? If the Ayatollah is dead, they just bring up another guy. They got 500,000 police force over there. We're going to have to do some hurt to them. I mean,
it's not going to be bombing. Bombing. Almost all the sites that we bombed at the beginning of the war have been repaired now. So bombing is not a permanent thing. Yeah, and look, China and Russia has resupplied Iran with missiles and drones and everything they need to continue. So we basically everything that we done early in the war has been undone, and this ordnance we expend is extremely expensive. What we need to do is use the bombing to support ground forces to destroy the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps
Yes.
on the ground and destroy those loyal army formations and turn the part of the Iranian army that is willing to join the people and get them to get free. That's what we need to do. We need to free those people, and then we will have a Middle East that is all pro-American, is going to work with us, and Russia and China will be kicked out of the region, and all the trouble that they could make, whether it's with the down there in Sudan or in the Saudi Peninsula with the Houthis and these other rebel groups that are controlled by Moscow and Beijing, that will be also resolved, and we can get rid of all the piracy down there.
If we
And-
don't
and
do
then-
this, Jeff,
Yeah,
this is going to become for Trump like Afghanistan became for Biden in that shameful pullout. If we pull out now and leave those Christians behind, tens of thousands murdered, hoping that Trump was going to come in there and liberate them, that will be his legacy. He'll never outlive that. How shameful it would be to just turn our back on him now. What do you think?
It's a terrible thing for Americans to go and fight and die, but a lot of Americans think, oh, this isn't our war. We shouldn't be fighting and dying, and it's just to lose your son. Just think of it, of how terrible it is. But we lost sons in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. Come on, the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Civil War. This is the way of the world, and right now, this is the duty that's calling us now. We got into this, and there's only one way out: is to win. And if we don't win, the consequences for our people and our country, our economy, are grave consequences.
Let me ask you another question. How is it that even with DARPA, America has gotten so far behind? I know we fell behind scholastically to like bottom of the list with schools and education, but all these billions and trillions of dollars put into hardware, how did we not figure out that the future was drones?
Well, because where there is no vision, the people perish. I mean, we've got a bunch of lugheads that have been running things in this country. We've got these political narratives where people are attacking each other and distracting each other with issues that aren't the most important issues. Having the right kind of military and getting military spending. Look, drones are a lot cheaper than a lot of the weapons we use. And a lot of the weapons we've been using are made obsolete. A lot of our expensive weapons are obsolete in a drone-dominated battlefield.
Well, what can one missile cost you? $1 million, depending on what type it is?
Look what a tank can cost you, and a drone that costs $5,000 can take a tank out that's worth, $50 million.
So all these Gulf states in the first days of the war, when Iran shooting these drones off, they were shooting their missiles off. I think some of them had maximum of 30 missiles in their inventory. They blew their load like the first couple days.
Yeah, that's right. Because the missile defenses are so expensive compared to the things they're stopping. So this is another reason we've got to defeat this regime. They're just freaking crazy. They've made Iran into a giant missile base with thousands of missiles. I mean, what was the number that I read? 50,000 drones and missiles in Iran.
I heard there were 50,000 fast boats. I know Ukraine has done something.
I think it's over 20,000, but some people say only maybe 16,000. We don't know the number of the fast boats, but that's bad enough. I mean,
that's bad enough, man.
The problem is a lot of this small stuff can do things to the big stuff that we don't realize because of the technology, that's increased.
Well, take the most expensive Iranian drone. What will you call that? The Shahad 3? Let's just say.
Yeah, the Shaheed is, and it's
6 to 10,000 US.
Yeah.
Okay.
About that.
Take the most expensive drone, and then how many missiles does it take to shoot that down? At $100,000, $1 million a pop. I mean, they can bankrupt you, right?
The Ukrainians can make a drone for 3,000 that can shoot down a Shaheed.
That's amazing. $3,000 technology. I heard Ukraine got the right idea. They actually put out a program for the citizenry
Hmm.
help in the war effort. We will
Yeah.
give you Zoom training on how to make drones, and you'll get paid so much. And they showed one family they had made 10 drones for the war effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm ready to sign up for that Zoom class myself.
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of
You can
cool.
make them in your garage, right? You just buy the parts. Buy the parts from Amazon. Look,
Good grief, it's amazing.
it is, and a country can pull together, and a lot of Europeans. Look, there's you've got people like Boris Tiesenhausen, who runs a channel, and he raises money from Western listen. He's got a million people listening to him, and they send money to these brigades so that they can buy vehicles and drones and electronic equipment that they need and medical equipment. So and he's not the only one raising money for the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians are not only receiving money from European countries and Japan. This is big. Japan, in Tokyo on July 1st, the Ukrainian foreign minister went there, and Japan committed to sending a large amount of money. I think it was $100 million to support Ukraine. And Japan wants to be in on rebuilding Ukraine after the war, and they want to, of course, swap drone technology and work together. And of course, Moscow was upset. Oh, look, there's this alliance between Ukraine and Japan. Well, yeah, you're threatening both of them. You're fighting you. A lot of people don't realize that China had asked Russia to help them attack Japan before Russia said, no, we have to deal with Ukraine first.
Really?
So Japan knows they're number 2 on the list here to be attacked.
Oh,
So
my
yeah,
goodness.
they've gotten together. Yeah. So people don't realize what is really going on here with this carnivorous great power competition.
These are master chess players, aren't they?
Well, they haven't played very masterfully here in Ukraine. The Russians have rather tripped on their own shoelaces. But I think the real problem for us, of course, is Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. We have to fix this problem. And I think
I'm looking.
I predicted early on that there wasn't going to be any negotiated peace there. And so my prediction now is when the markets start to tank, when people realize that this oil is never going to come back on the market unless we go in, there's going to be panic in Washington, and they're going to realize that they should have sent troops right away. And that's when we're going to start a buildup, and then the real war is going to be in the offing over there.
With the 8 minutes left, I'll cap it at 2 hours and show you mercy tonight because you're on the East Coast. Let me ask you about discussion we had last time. You were going to research the area of UFOs and write a book. Where are you at with that process?
I'm going through it. It's very interesting. You probably saw the movie Disclosure Day Steven Spielberg made. There's a lot of socialist left-wing subcontext in a lot of this UFO, UAP talk. Disclosure, there's a lot of anti-Pentagon, anti-American stuff involved in this, saying, oh, we've got the technology, the greedy capitalists are keeping it for themselves. All of these themes kind of come out in Spielberg's movie. But it's funny, we've seen some interesting releases, interesting photographs or videos of some very bizarre looking craft. Don't know whether they're ours or what they are. And there's been some interesting, semi-admissions, not full admissions from NASA about things they've seen in space that they can't explain. But there's still no smoking gun. And in reviewing the literature, I have come to the conclusion now, after a long time of mulling it over, that I don't believe there was some kind of alien spaceship that crashed at Roswell. I think that you've got all the main witnesses that were interviewed after the fact were secondhand, some of them very suspect. I think it's become a kind of mixture of hysteria, and the will to believe has taken over, because when you go through the data releases that we've got now, there are secret documents now being released where statements of some of the generals and some of the leaders are not the statements they would have made if Roswell had really happened. And nobody's really noticing this, that they're still not sure what this thing, they believe it's a real phenomenon. the generals, it was like the Twining memo has been confirmed to be real, where General Nathan Twining, I think he was the head of the Air Defense Command, said that flying saucers are serious business, and they are not visionary or fictitious. But what are they? And of course, uh, in other statements and statements like that, there is also the expression that, well, we really don't know what these things are, and we need to find out. And when you get to the Robertson panel, they don't deny that there's something real in the phenomenon. Of course, what is it? What they say is that there's a real possibility for Russian Soviet propaganda and active measures to build on the anticipation of extraterrestrial visitors. And that is what we've seen happen.
I would
And
agree with that narrative.
yeah. There's this socialist subtext that capitalism is evil and it's keeping the wonderful secret of free energy, right, from the masses. This is definitely a communist message, and you can see it woven into UFO narratives.
Yes, I agree with that based on two things. And I got someone you should consider to interview. Have you heard of a lady named Annie Jacobson in a book called Area 51?
Yes.
Okay.
I've read the book. Yes.
So I didn't read the book, but I heard her interviewed on Joe Rogan or one of those shows. And if I understood, her narrative is even this whole thing about the aliens was a military operation where they took a couple orphan kids that had Down syndrome, did cosmetic surgery on them, shaved off all their hair. And she's interviewing one guy in his 90s, and he's crying as his wife comes into the room where Annie's interviewing him. And why are you crying, honey? And he said, I've got to confess, I was involved in some of this stuff. She had no idea.
They were going to make fake aliens with. I've heard Jacobson and read the book about this. Yeah, this is a 90-something-year-old guy. He'd been on the Manhattan Project, and he said that that we had taken Down syndrome children, and we had operated on them to make them look like aliens. And
that's
so that
horrible to consider.
We could do a kind of hoax, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the Department of Energy was injecting black folk with syphilis. We had the MK Ultra LSD.
There's
stuff going
been some horrible, I mean, certainly the Nazis had the gold standard for torturing people for medical experiments, but that somehow continued on because some of the MK Ultra stuff was kind of taken from the Nazi experiments. They were playing off of those, and the Soviets did the same thing.
So you bring them over?
In fact, one of the KGB generals, and I forget what department it was, they were doing a lot of parapsychological research, and including summoning entities, doing what would be called black magic, right?
Oh, yeah.
So this
remote
I think,
viewing.
With remote viewing and all these kind of things, you're seeing that what the Babylonians, ancient Babylonians, Sumerians, the Egyptians were doing, and some of the ancient Romans, because we've got, you read Tacitus, you read some of these ancient sources, and people were using black magic on each other, I think, Augustus' wife Livia was thought to have used black magic to kill some of his relations that might have become emperor before her son Tiberius could become emperor. So there's a history of black magic being used to kill people, right?
Oh, I mean, it's real, and it can kill people.
Yeah.
If you don't know Jesus, I think that it comes down to two things. Either you're seeing, to a large part, advanced military hardware in its testing phase, but if it's not man-made, then it's fallen angels. It's Genesis 6 kind of stuff. I don't believe that there's anything else out there, any Space Brothers, and that's all a big deception.
The Space Brothers sound remarkably like Ban the Bomb socialists from the 50s, don't they?
There was one interesting thing that I saw pop up, and I can't give you the guy's name right now because I forgot it, but I'll find out who it was. He was a former Special Forces dude, got some military contracts, and he was on the Sean Ryan show.
I think I've seen what you're talking. I think I've seen him, yeah.
Over next to, I think, Edwards Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. And, a couple of years ago where there were all these sightings of apparent UFOs around military bases, and the government was kind of hush-hush. Yeah. Made people, what the hell's going on? Are we being invaded? He said one of the military complex, I don't know if it was Lockheed, one of the skunk works, was testing some kind of mother drone ship. In other words, a mothership that would have the little drone swarms come out of its belly.
Sure.
And they were doing some of those maneuvers over near a military base. So he said that was just drone. But again, the fact that we are supposed to be cutting edge and we couldn't figure out you could use a little drone, I mean, that's shameful. I got one final bonus question. It's on everybody's radar right now. Who killed Charlie Kirk? I've seen some footage of what appears to be his shirt expanding. Looks like an explosion. I'm going with the theory that there is an exploding road mic. Someone wanted him dead. I'm not saying who it is. I don't know. But they took that guy out, because you're going to tell me that you're going to hit a guy in the neck with a 30-06 and it's not going to blow his whole head off? What is the shirt bulge about? I think it was an exploding road mic. It's up for people to determine who it was. I don't know. Somebody killed him. But I don't think it was a shooter.
Look at the evidence in the trial, we can.
What do you think?
I think you can. I think that the boy that's been put on trial, it's clearly shot him.
But how do you get shot with a deer rifle and you don't even have an exit wound? Oh, it was his neck cartilage? Come on, man. With a 30-06? I think that's what he got shot with. That would take off a person's head, or at least exit the back. Listen,
I wouldn't try to parse it too much, because we're not experts in.
Well, no, I'm not.
In it, yeah.
But what would cause a shirt bulge? I mean, like, it looked to me like there was an explosion in the shirt. And again, I want to be very careful. I'm not going to point fingers at anybody. I don't trust any of them. But I just think it highly suspicious. It goes back to JFK. It was the lone shooter. And then we're to believe that one dude shot Trump in the ear. He had 6 cell phones. You know, where's the footage? We got all these lone shooter theories. I don't buy any of it, and I want to see the Epstein files,
I think,
by the way.
well, we've got a long history of presidents and other people being shot by lone shooters, and it's very well documented. So I don't see why Tyler Robinson didn't shoot Charlie Kirk. His parents believed that he did. His parents turned him in. Do you think parents would turn in a child if they didn't believe that weren't appalled and didn't conclude that their child had been involved in it?
Well, he definitely had some psychological problems. He's dating a man, making love to a man who's a woman who's a man, transvestite love, whatever that was.
It's a terribly psychologically disturbed thing to shoot someone like that.
It is, but what causes a shirt bulge?
Yeah, the evidence presented by the prosecutors during the hearings. Okay, this is what, September 10th last year, right? Around noon. This is the Utah Valley University. Kirk was speaking before, I don't know if it was hundreds of people or over 1,000 at the Turning Point USA event. The investigators say that Robinson climbed over a railing onto a nearby gravel rooftop, overlooking the event. It's a perfect vantage point, right, for shooting. A campus police officer later discovered a sniper pad on the roof showing a body impression where the shooter was lying there prone, with a clear line of sight to Kirk. Now, from a distance of 125 meters, a single bullet was fired and it hit Kirk in the neck horrifically while he was taking questions from the crowd. And of course, he was rushed to the hospital. But those of us that saw the wound right then on the video, we knew this was a fatal shot.
Sure.
We could see that. You get hit in them, and hitting soft, a rifle bullet is made to do some very, very bad damage and things to people. And so the weapon was a bolt-action rifle, and they're very. Look at it. Was the main military bolt-action rifles were the main military weapons of World War I and World War II.
Right, powerful.
The first half of World War II, most casualties were caused by bolt-action rifles.
Oh yeah.
So
30-06.
It's made to kill people. The Mauser, the
M1 Garand,
German rifle.
The Mausers, the Mauser 93 and the M1 Garands on the American side. And
they do a lot of damage. Their precision, a rifle is a precision killing instrument. And so, and in this case, the investigators recovered the rifle. It had one spent round. Wrapped in a towel. It was wrapped in a towel in a wooded area near the campus where Robinson had fled. and the DNA on the towel was linked to Robinson and his roommate, right? So, I mean,
I
that's
don't say he's not involved at some point, but I think he could have
pretty.
been a mentally challenged man, and he was the fall guy. But here's an interesting question: why was there's immediate construction done over there in the area where Charlie was hit? What happened to the
I
camera
don't know
footage?
the answer to that, but people do make all kinds of stupid things and make all kinds of stupid decisions. And the police aren't perfect, and there's a lot going on. I mean, I imagine the detectives might have been very angry that somebody had done something, but maybe that construction was already planned. When the event was done to do that. I don't know.
I don't know either.
But the evidence presented in court includes. Let's just go through this: text messages. Prior to the shooting, Robinson left a note, remember that, for his roommate, Lance Twiggs. Isn't that the name of the guy that, and he wrote, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it," unquote.
Wow.
That's pretty, I mean, so, and then he later texted Twiggs that he targeted Kirk because he, quote, had enough of his hatred, homophobia or whatever, because these guys were sexually deviant. So, and then in about an hour before turning himself in, and I mean, does an innocent person turn themselves in? Robinson posted, quote, "It was me at UVU yesterday," unquote, in a Discord chat room. So, I mean, come on. I mean, I don't understand how so much evidence can be on this guy, and then people can think of all these conspiracy theories. I mean, in recorded interviews played during a preliminary hearing, Twiggs, that's the roommate that he was in love with, testified that a tearful Robinson, pacing in their apartment, confessed to the killing and said, quote, "He wishes he hadn't done it," unquote.
What he had to gain, yeah, I mean, in terms of what he could, the price he could
Crazy,
pay,
it's mad, it's
execution.
psychotic. Yes, murder always is horrible.
Here's my theory. He was there, and it's true everything he said, his intention, he may have even pulled the trigger. But I think somebody planted an exploding road mic for that bulge to happen, and that thing took him out. I don't want to say who did it. Could have been anybody who didn't want to see us continue in this war to help Israel, to help go against Iran, whatever. That's just my sense. But one final thing: what the hell's going on with the Epstein files? Why has not one person been brought to justice from Pedo Island? We know some horrible things were going on. Why the cover-up over there? What's your thoughts on that? Would you like to see somebody go to jail? We never see nobody go to jail. Savings and loan scandal, one token person went to jail. All we've got is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail, and her father was a spy, was he not?
Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, yeah, he was. It's widely thought. Well, the British media has quoted sources in MI6 that he was a KGB agent. So, yeah.
I've heard too. I've heard he was KGB. I've heard he worked for Mossad. Maybe he was a double agent. I heard, though, he was a master spy for whoever he worked for.
He was probably not a master spy, but he was definitely working for the communists.
Did they push him off the back of the boat? What do you think?
Either he committed suicide or maybe somebody killed him. We don't know. He was betraying the Israelis. The Mossad might have killed him because he was trying to harm Mossad. His real allegiance is, he was celebrated in Israel because he used communist Czechoslovakia in 1948, used weapons from there to arm the Israelis in the formation of the State of Israel when they were being assailed by 3 or 4 Arab armies, and they had no heavy weapons. So the only place they could get heavy weapons, the United States, Britain, and France weren't going to help Israel. We didn't give them any help.
No,
it was
shameful.
This guy who had a communist friend in the government in Prague, Robert Maxwell. He got some old Luftwaffe aircraft, and he got some other German weapons, and they sent him to Israel so that they could defend themselves in 1948 when the State of Israel was formed. So that's why he celebrated in Israel. The idea that he was a Mossad agent, I think that the consensus among the best espionage writers in Britain is that he worked for the Russians. So he went to Russia all the time. He traveled there. He knew all the Russian leaders. He was very, very well connected to the Soviet Union.
So was Epstein basically a honeypot island?
Oh yeah, and I think he was working for the Russians clearly because Ghislaine Maxwell, and because, by the way, he refused to travel to Israel, but he traveled to Russia all the time. Epstein's Epstein's pilot was Russian, his bodyguard was Russian, and his right-hand assistant was Russian. So how is he an Israeli agent when that's the case with him?
Are you happy as an American, as I am an American? Are you happy with the fact that we haven't seen anybody brought to justice from Epstein Island? There's
No,
nothing to
of
see
course
here.
not. No.
Oh, there was,
I'm not happy with the fact that this guy was not brought to trial and everything wasn't brought out, and that he died in his prison cell. Supposedly he was under a suicide watch,
right?
and he dies in his cell. That obviously there's no excuse for that. And the fact that nobody was held accountable for that, and the attorney general's lame excuse that he studied the videos and it was a suicide, that doesn't wash with me.
Well, Don
There's
Bongino
something very
doesn't wash with
wrong.
me
I mean,
either.
this pedophile thing, there's something dark and dirty here.
Oh, big time. I mean, nothing to see here from the FBI and the assistant, and Bongino quitting. I'm not happy with Bongino. I
No,
would
I'm
have
not either.
respected him if when he had an opportunity, had blown the whistle. Now, somebody must have threatened his life. I don't think it's enough to say, well, I'm going to resign because me and my wife are estranged a little bit. She's over here. Well, move her to D.C., for goodness sakes. Blow the whistle.
Whose wife is estranged?
Don Bongino said, well, I've got to resign because I'm not living with my wife right now. She's living over there. I'm here. It's hurting the family. That's what I heard. I don't, not that they were separated, but she just wasn't geographically living where he was. And he said, I got to look at these four walls. I don't buy that for a minute. I think he could not cut the mustard. Now, he would have probably died if he had blown the whistle, because somebody's covering up bad stuff. Is Trump involved? I don't know.
He made a great deal about the Epstein stuff beforehand when he was broadcasting.
Of course he did.
And then
he's like Trump.
He gets into this position, but then he has to be quiet when Attorney General Pam Bondi is keeping 5,000 files back.
Well, exactly. And she's the lady that is on camera and said, I saw all kinds of stuff there.
Well, and I understand protecting witnesses, but they released things that showed the names of some of those girls that were exploited. And look, some of the senators and congressmen who've seen the other files, because they have access to them, have said that there's stuff about Trump in there. And of course, we know there in the files that were released, there were things about Trump being accused by a 13-year-old, for example, of something that happened at Epstein's house with Trump and Epstein with a 13-year-old. I mean, you have allegations of child rape against Donald Trump in this matters. And Donald Trump was the best friend of Epstein for 15 years. This is what really bothers me. And that Trump says there's nothing to see here, move along. I'm sorry. This does not pass my smell test. There needs to be an independent counsel. This needs to be investigated. The attorney general, of course, ended up resigning, but the thing is that there's something there. And I don't, even the taint of our government having a foreign honey trap, a foreign child trafficking honey trap that might have trapped the president or people in his cabinet, as we know, touched by this, and other people in the country, major business people. We need this thoroughly aired.
Are we to believe that the CIA and NSA were not in the know? If you were oblivious to that, you need to be shut down just for stupidity. Of course they know. They access all communications. That would have been on their radar.
I think the danger is that when you've got a pedophile ring, if it's really successful, it will have already compromised law enforcement, the Justice Department, and the CIA, elements in the CIA and the FBI. They would have already, because they would have to do that in order to operate with impunity. And they seem to have been operating with impunity.
I agree with you.
Right?
I agree with you. And Bongino, if he was listening, I don't think he is. But if you're listening, you come on and give your side of the story. I believe either he was threatened and he would have been killed, he was told, if he opened his mouth, and or he was worried about, what am I going to do post GS civil servant? I can lose all my livelihood. Wouldn't be the podcaster that I was. I mean, You can make millions as a podcaster. If you're like some of those guys, you don't make much as a GS civil servant. I was a GS civil servant. I know what they pay, even at GM level. In fact, I don't even know how Hegseth is hanging on. These are guys that were making tens of millions of dollars a year. Even the top level GM is not going to make more than about 150 grand a year.
But you see, I think the problem is, as intelligent as Bongino's show has been compared to others, the problem is that none of these people are really, they're not political scientists. They're not heavily studied.
No.
I don't think they fully know what they've been getting themselves into. It takes a lifetime to study, to understand how difficult all these issues are and how government works. And of course, it's people who've been working in government at a certain level their whole careers who are the expert bureaucrats and the experts in different areas. For these guys who are basically, Bongino was a Secret Service agent and a cop.
Right.
To go into such a difficult political position without, just having been a commentator, I don't think he had the understanding or the depth of the background to understand what he was getting himself into. And I think it was maybe too much for him. And I think that Hegseth is definitely not a heavyweight.
No way.
And he is not a good administrator. And he doesn't know what he's doing. To be honest, he doesn't. And we need somebody else in there who is much better. I mean, say what you will about Donald Rumsfeld, maybe the devil himself, but he was extremely
I was thinking
competent.
about him. Oh, listen.
Very competent. Very, very competent.
That guy was shrewd.
Very sharp.
Smart guy. Hegseth, I'm just wondering if he wasn't elected just so he could be controlled. Somebody's pulling the strings behind that guy.
Well, it's Trump. Trump, remember, he picked a bunch of yes men. He some people says the administration was full of sycophants. That Pam Bondi and Hegseth especially were model sycophants, and that these people were not people of real leadership ability or weight, that they should not have been picked. And it's because I think you had a better lineup in Trump's first administration in many ways. There's many of those people I don't agree with, but they were very sober, very experienced and seasoned people that he had especially in his national security team. And he did not go wrong. I think his first term had a very solid national security achievements. Now in this term, a lot of missteps, threatening Greenland, damaging our alliance, our NATO alliance, threatening Canada. I mean, I've been to Canada since he made those threats. The people in Canada are horribly offended and confused by the threats of their annexation by Americans. You have to go to Canada and meet some of the politicians and the military people there to know how much it's affected them. Just the words that he said. Words have meaning. True. Annex Canada, our great 51st state. It sounds funny to us, but it's not a joke to them.
Oh no.
And then of course this war in Iran, this horrible misstep, which we are now stuck in. I think that Trump is going to be impeached, to be honest, next year. And I would not be surprised if the Republicans in the Senate this time convict him, because they just want to wipe their hands of him.
Jonathan Cahn, the Messianic rabbi, has got a new book coming out, Ultra Pergamon, and I saw the promo for it, and he says there's a template for all these modern presidents. He can find you in there. He believes where even goes back to Clinton and Hillary, Obama, Biden, even Kamala, even Trump. And what the clickbait for me to watch this, and it was worthwhile watching, was will Trump continue past 2028 and get a third term? I'll give you the spoiler. He says no. He will not be going past 2028. He believes he will finish it out, best case scenario, but there'll be no third term. Question is, who's going to run next? You think Don Jr., or do you think we're going to lose it to Newsom out there in Canada?
No, I don't think Trump's going to finish his term. I think Trump is finished. Yeah, I believe he will be impeached, and he will be then removed. And I think if not, then he will die in office. I don't think he's going to make it. The pressure on him, the mistakes that he's made, it's wearing him down. And
4 hours of sleep.
He lost his political capital.
eating
Yeah.
McD's 24/7, 4 hours of sleep. How do you do that? My wife doesn't get enough sleep. I said, are you trying to be like President Trump? Go to bed.
Yeah.
Nobody can survive on that amount of sleep for long. He doesn't
Well,
look well. I hope he
no.
lives, but he doesn't look well.
He doesn't look well, and I'm not a super big fan of J.D. Vance. I think he's young and he doesn't really understand a lot of issues, so I'm kind of concerned about that. And I'm really concerned if one of these radical Democrats gets elected president in 2028. That
goodness.
really troubles me. I'm to be honest, I'm really scared of all of them. They all scare me, because I think that there's many ways to go over a cliff. And
Not to
I look
mention
at the policies of all these people and I'm thinking they're all going to drive us over one cliff or another.
even the Democrats are afraid. They're being invaded by fascists.
Well, they believe that. Yeah, I think all the fascists were in Italy and we're under Mussolini. I don't think they're.
Well, in other words,
The way people use terms today, it's kind of funny.
are they communists then? I mean, you got Mondami in New York, and you got a couple of senators.
Mondami is a socialist. I mean, he's embraced it. I mean, the capital city of capitalism is run by socialists. Go figure. How did we win the Cold War when this happens? There's no winning. Look, we're in a very terrible situation where Marxist ideas, disguised and mixed up, all this political correctness, which is just critical theory,
Yes.
which is basically a type of Marxism, a part of Marxism, is taken over. And we don't realize that these ideas are incompatible with the American way, with our traditions, with the ideals of our founding father, with our Constitution. And so the two things are going to collide. And people better wake up and realize you have rights. You have a wonderful country here. But I don't think they do. They want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if we don't do it, we're going to come close. And we're facing bankruptcy because we're never going to pay this debt off. Let's be honest, we're past the point of no return now on debt, on the national debt. That's not including the debt that all the cities and the states have. It's horrific. So we're looking at a kind of jubilee situation where the financial system is going to flatline. So we're looking at a depression, at a crack-up boom, as Ludwig von Mises, the Austrian economist, would call it. And we're also looking at a possible world war and a possible civil war. These things, the pressures for all these things are all lined up. I hope we can escape all that. But I got to be honest, history doesn't read like a fairy tale where we all live happily ever after. It's usually one thing after another. And we've got it coming, I'm afraid.
We're in trouble. I want to thank you, Jeffrey, for coming on tonight. Man, I enjoyed hearing your take on those topics tonight. Before we close, tell people how they can follow your work. Now, for those watching YouTube, you can see some of the links, but we got some people that have just been listening on audio. So give out each one of your links.
Yeah.
And how people can support your work.
Yeah. J.R. Nyquist, JRNyquist.blog, jrnyquist.blog is my website. And there's lots of great articles there. You can read about UFOs, about some more interesting things that I found out about that, and about Ukraine and the war in Iraq. The Epstein, I have a big piece I wrote earlier this year about the Epstein files and about the pedophile rings and Satanism and so on. There's some very disturbing things out there, and it's hard to know how to parse them. Also, my books are on Amazon. So you go to Amazon, my page at Amazon, J.R. Nyquist or Jeff Nyquist, Nyquist. And read The Fool and His Enemy or The New Tactics of Global War or Red Jihad or Return of the Evil Empire or Origins of the Fourth World War. Those are my books.
Folks, jrnyquist.blog. You can also find Jeffrey up on Facebook if you want to send him a friend request. My friend, we love and appreciate you. What shall we title today's show for the archive?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Do you hear the voices too?
Oh, I like it. Let's do it.
All right.
My friend, we'll see you next time. God bless you. And we'll have you back on soon. Thank you for coming on. Have a great weekend there.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
Folks, Jeffrey Nyquist, jrnyquist.blog, and this will be available immediately up on YouTube Live tab. Well, that is going to complete our broadcast schedule for this week. I think that's all we got, folks. And then we're going to be back on Sunday. Start a whole fresh week. Let me just look at the schedule just to make sure, because I've been known to put in some extra shows here. I want to make sure I'm not leaving anybody out. Yep. We're going to be back on Sunday, 9 o'clock, Speak My Word, Tom Mack, Tom Baird. We're going to have special guest Bob Ewart, first time, on Monday. I'll be doing a show with TBTRN, Kevin Gallagher on Tuesday, Sabrina Sessions this week, David White, Michael Smith, Michael Cummins, Sharon Croft will be with us this week and more. I've got several spots open. I'm reaching out to some guests, and some of them are on the road. They said as soon as they get back, they'll be back on with us. We've got a Soul Bait hotline this month, July 30th. Every Sunday, I send out an issue of our newsletter. Just do it once a week. Sent one out last Sunday, issue 3. I'll be sending out issue 4 this week. So if there's some special stuff I want to keep you alerted on that you may be interested in knowing about in advance, I'll put it in the newsletter. It's free. Just sign up, shannonraydavis.substack.com. If you'd like to fuel these podcasts, people like you have fueled us and gotten us this far. I want to thank Brother Dave, who purchased the microphone we're using tonight. I want to thank those that have given so we could turn podcast archives back on at Podomatic. It takes money. I don't have anything to sell at this juncture. Maybe a book in the future will be great, generate some revenue. But right now, we just rely on your free will and love offerings to keep this program alive. Any bit you want to help us with goes a long way. You can go to my website, OMEGAMANRadio.com, or on the screen for those that are watching. We got Cash App, we got Zelly, we got GoFundMe, PayPal. If you want to help us, you can do so. And I pray that God richly bless you now and in his kingdom come and give you an equal share of any reward that comes from the efforts here. We're on season 16. I was going to put up an advertisement here. Where's it at? Got so many of these thumbnails. I can't find my thumbnail. I'll find it in a minute. Season 16. We've been here 16 years. 10 years of that in Bali. We've got over 12,200 podcasts. 95% of those are available right now for download. Just go over to Podomatic. There's a link to that in my newsletter. Another reason to get on the newsletter. So these are all free. Help yourself. Share them with a friend. And what more do I need to say? We're going to keep going. I'm working to get at least 2 shows a day running for you. In addition to Speak My Word, we're trying to do a 10 a.m. Eastern and a 10 p.m. Eastern. And we have other slots available if we have guests to put in there. But there we are. I want to try to do at least 2 Omega Man shows a day plus 1 Speak My Word radio. That's our plan. Thank you for your prayers and your support. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, Yehovah, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Holy be thy name. We thank you for this opportunity to do these programs this week. Bless all those that came out. Bless those who have supported the program. Bless all of our speakers. Put a hedge of protection, wall of fire from Zechariah 2 and 5 around all of us. We plead the blood of Jesus over everyone tuning in, your family, me and mine, our president, Israel. Have your way, Father God. Bless all those who have come out this week. Keep them safe with a wall of fire from Zechariah 2 and 5 and a line of the blood of Jesus drawn around us all. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. Friends, I'm going to get out of here. God bless you. I'll see you back on Sunday. And again, get on our Substack if you'd like to get included in that mail out. Okay, that's all I got to say. Now I got to sit down for a minute. I'm in a standing desk mode. Been standing up 3.5 hours. Feet get tired after a while. Okay, folks, love you.